screen. Thank you everyone for joining the Innovation and Tech Law Summit today. It's indeed very good to have you join us today. My name is Chuma Akana. I'm the convener of the Innovation and Tech Law Summit, and together with my team, we have put together a very, what we hope is an interesting and insightful summit for everyone today. And before we go directly into the business of the day, let me just use this opportunity to talk briefly about the Innovation and Tech Law Summit. Innovation and Tech Law Summit is organized by the Innovation and Technology Lawyers Network. It's a network of lawyers, law firms, startups, tech companies who are interested or have a mission to bridge the law and technology gap. So we have realized that law and technology is, in some clients, even like an oxymoron. So the law is always playing catch up with technology. And we've decided that it is important to drive the conversation and to make that change happen. And we intend to do it in three ways. Collaboration, which is what we're having today, like having a summit, discussing with major stakeholders and people in the tech industry and ecosystem to see how we could bridge the gap between law and technology. The other way is education, because we believe that for us to be able to get to where we are going to, we need change agents, and those change agents need to be properly educated with respect to how law and technology can work together. And the third one is engagement. So after summits like this, we want to take it further to engage the necessary stakeholders, engage regulators, engage everyone who is playing in that industry or in that space to be able to ensure that the proper things are done and the right kind of regulation is used for fintech, for legal tech, for edutech, and other industries within the technology ecosystem. Last year, we had a summit, the Innovation and Tech Law Summit, which was the maiden edition, and it was well attended. We had over 150 people attend. We had over 14 speakers from different areas, C-level executives, and major players within the tech ecosystem. So I'll just use this opportunity to share a bit of how the summit went last year for our view. Thank you, guys. So that was part of what we did last year. And the theme for the summit last year was creating an enabling innovation, creating an enabling environment for digital innovation. This year, the theme is leveraging digital transformation. And we've chosen the theme carefully because we believe that after the pandemic and the effects of COVID-19, it is very important for professionals, especially lawyers, and we around the tech ecosystem to leverage on this digital transformation that we're talking about. And I'm glad that we have a very interesting panel that can do justice to this topic today. So I'll start by moving directly into the panel session, which I have the honor to moderate. And thank you very much, my panelists, for joining me. You can unmute yourselves, please.
Thank you. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. How are you doing?
Hi,
Around. So I'll start by reading some of just a brief profile for our panelists before we go directly into the discussion. We have with us as one of the discussants in this panel, Mr. Oyetola Muyiwa Asoyebi, SAN. He's an exceptional technology lawyer and thought leader with over a decade's worth of experience in legal practice and technology. He has facilitated numerous transactions and given countless legal opinions as regards tech in Nigeria. His outstanding performance has attracted international recognition and awards. He's the youngest lawyer in Nigeria's history to be conferred with the highly coveted rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He's the managing partner of Omaplex Law Firm, an established law firm driven by technology and innovation. As an expert in emerging areas of law practice, he has core competence in information technology, cybersecurity, fintech, robotics, and artificial intelligence. He is described to be the go-to person when it comes to issues around tech. The learned Silk is best characterized as a diligent, resourceful, and yet humble individual who is revered for his highly analytical and pragmatic approach to solving legal problems, as well as unwavering commitment to achieving client goals. Indeed, his hard work and dedication to his clients set him apart. Beyond his interest in law, the learned Silk is an avid golfer and a tech enthusiast. Leonard Silk, you're most welcome to this panel.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm grateful. Thank you very much.
Also on this panel today, we have Mr. Ibrahim Umar Hassan. Mr. Ibrahim Umar Hassan is the Deputy Director in the Financial System Strategy 2020 Secretariat of the Central Bank of Nigeria, with over 2 decades of central banking experience, covering operations, strategy, knowledge, management, and financial consumer protection, regulation in the Nigerian banking sector. Mr. Hassan currently heads the Strategy Management Group in the FSS 2020 Secretariat, overseeing the development and implementation of FSS 2020 strategic initiatives in the financial markets, mortgages, pensions, insurance, and MSME sectors. Ibrahim is a certified fraud examiner, a certified financial education instructor, a certified knowledge manager, CKM, a Microsoft certified technology specialist, and a Palladian Kaplan Norton Balance Scorecard certification. I hope I got that right. Mr. Hassan holds
That's correct. Thank you.
bachelor's degree from Ahmadu Bello University, Nigeria, and the degrees of LLM, Commercial and Consumer Law, and MBA, International Business, with distinction from Universities of South Wales and Liverpool, respectively, United Kingdom. He's also a 2019 FLPFI Fellow of Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts University, United States. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Nice to be here.
We also have with us, and he has been on for a while, Mr. Simeon Ononobi. Simeon is a serial entrepreneur who studied biochemistry at the Federal University of Technology, Owerri, Imo State. He first showed his love for tech worldwide, for the tech world while in university when he started his first business called CompuVersity, where he taught people how to use computers and surf the web. He left school and started a project called Back Up My Phone that allowed people to back up mobile phone information. He was internationally recognized in 2013 when he won the 6 Stars World Lagos competition for Best Nigerian Startup for his innovation in simple pay. He then went on to represent Nigeria internationally, and out of 52 contestants from around the world in Geneva, Switzerland, he came out first runner-up and was awarded $330,000. Now, since he gained international recognition, Simeon has not relented his efforts towards providing tech solutions in Nigeria, Africa, and to the rest of the world. He has created and sold a lot of solutions to corporate bodies and federal government. In 2015, Simeon founded My Ads Global, first of its kind innovation globally. The My Ads app is an app that rewards users instantly with cash points for viewing targeted ads on their mobile devices during incoming calls. He currently co-founded and is the CEO at Connected Analytics Incorporated, the parent company for a multi-merchant rewards platform called Thank You Cash. He currently serves as the Global Chief Executive Officer and operates the company from Lagos, Nigeria, with offices in San Francisco, California, and India. As a tech enthusiast and conference speaker, he continues to motivate tech newbies across the world. He has spoken in over 50 global tech conferences and events, a multi-award winner with over 37 local and global awards. Simeon has broken barriers in the tech world and provided tech solutions to our everyday problems. Nigerian top executives in the IT and software industry selected him in the top 1% of all Nigerian executives in 2015 in the IT and software industry. I could go on and on, but we'll have to stop somewhere. Simeon, thank you for joining the panel. It's good to have you here. Simeon, are you there? Okay, I do hope he joins us. Also on this panel, we have Angel Lorente. Angel is the founder and master connector of Fintech Connector. He's an expert two-sided marketplace platform that is revolutionizing how people, organizations, and capital connect, collaborate, and cultivate fintech ideas into financial services innovation. In less than 2 years, Angel and his team have grown Fintech Connector into 20 real-world communities led by influential community partners and created an online member platform with over 2,800 members from 100 countries. Angel is also the America's Finance Innovation Leader for Morgan Stanley. Over his 25-year career in financial services, Angel has united his leadership skills and his extensive product control and finance infrastructure knowledge to change the culture around innovation and the use of emerging technologies and smart automation to make things better. Angel gives back to the startup community by independently advising and mentoring fintech entrepreneurs on scaling and leading and growing their business. Angel was the chief of staff for the New York chapter of ALPFA, and I'm sure Angel will tell us what that means, the largest Latino association of business professionals and students in the United States. In 2013, Angel was named Diversity MBA magazine's top 150 diverse business executives. Angel earned his undergraduate degree in accounting from Baruch College and his MBA degree with a concentration in finance and information systems from Pace University. Angel received a certificate in Fintech, Future Commerce, and a certificate in Big Data and Social Analytics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 2016 and 2017, respectively. Angel, we are most grateful for
Thank you.
your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Also, we have Mr. Rotimi Akapo, the partner in the law firm manages the TMC practice, which is telecommunications, media, and technology practice in Avoca Law Practice. He has worked as an in-house legal counsel at managerial and departmental head levels with MTN Nigeria, MTN Iran, and ITELAN Nigeria, now 9Mobile, and possesses in-depth corporate experience acquired from supporting and leading direct and cross-functional teams in dispute resolution, property acquisition, ethics and compliance, government relations, negotiations, and contract drafting and negotiations for major complex transactions, and working on various business transformation projects. He was also the lead legal resource for the negotiation and acquisition of a telecommunication license and deployment of telecoms infrastructure in the Middle East on behalf of the multinational telecommunications network operator. Rotimi has been a regular speaker and panelist at various workshops and seminars, including the yearly Judges Workshop on Telecommunications, organized by the Nigerian Communications Commission and the Nigerian Digital Institute. He has facilitated several trainings and he is the lead facilitator of the firm's yearly training on negotiation and drafting telecommunications contracts. Rotimi holds an LLB degree from the Lagos State University and an LLM from the University of Cape Town, South Africa. Rotimi, we are glad to have you join this panel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Rotimi. Simeon, are you back up now?
Yeah, I've been here.
Okay, great. Angel, thanks for the video. We can see very well. I know it's a bit early. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, a bit early, yes. It's okay. Thank you.
Great, great. Finally, on the panel, we have Mr. Sheye Ayinla. Sheye is a purposeful attorney with strong work ethic and a mentality geared towards providing practical solutions to complex legal issues in areas spanning across capital markets, banking and finance, corporate finance, business advisory, intellectual property, taxation, and corporate and commercial practice. He has significant experience in advising on project finance and corporate finance transactions, security arrangements, mergers and acquisitions, and corporate restructuring. His aim is to provide clients with optimal solutions, which include but not limited to advice on day-to-day matters, as well as transactional engagements involving security offerings, business combinations, asset acquisitions, and dispositions. Sheye has advised on several landmark and award-winning transactions, both locally and internationally, in media and telecommunications, banking and finance, private equity and capital markets transactions. Sheye was recently nominated with the 40 Under 40 Award for Outstanding Achievements in the Legal Industry at the ESQ Nigerian Legal Awards 2018. Sheye is a partner with the law firm of DOA Law. Sheye, you're very welcome to the panel discussion. Sheye, are you...
Thanks a lot, Chuma. Glad to be here.
Okay, great. So we'll just go straight into the discussion. And my first question will be for Mr. Ibrahim Umar Hassan. So the topic is fostering the fintech ecosystem. And a lot of us know that the CBN has this National Financial Inclusion Strategy for 2020, which is to get at least 70% financial inclusion by 2020. And it appears that this has not been achieved, actually, because this is 2020, and I don't think we have gotten to that 70% financial inclusion. So in your own view, what more do you think needs to be done? And how can regulation ensure that this financial inclusion drive happens?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator and fellow panelists. It is great to be here once again. And congratulations for putting together this very important collaborative platform. And I think we need more of this in the fintech ecosystem to appreciate our different roles and also how we could scale up to get to the level we want to get to. So we need to do more of this. Now, before I talk about directly to your question on financial inclusion, we need to quickly understand the other components of the ecosystem, of the fintech ecosystem, especially in Nigeria. Because my fear is if you only look at it in isolation without understanding that it is part of an ecosystem, we may not get the full benefit of the collaborative, the need for collaboration, the understanding that we all rely on each other to move together. So very important to appreciate the consumers of the financial products and services we are talking about, the financial institutions through which these services are delivered, fintech startups who are the drivers of innovation coming up with new solutions that are cost effective, that are convenient, that are useful, the investors who provide the startup capital, the venture capitalists, educational institutions that incubate and sow in the minds of our young people the ideas on how to bring about changes in society, how to innovate, how to solve real life problems, and finally the regulators, which are, yes, we know regulators are not usually the most popular people. To most people, they are a necessary evil, but then knowing the nature of how the markets function, it makes a lot of sense to have a regulator around to make sure that, yes, things are going as much as possible as they should be. It's not an ideal situation in a free market economy where everybody should be allowed the market forces as the invisible hand, as famously said by Adam Smith, should determine what happens. But sadly, it doesn't always take place. So you know the regulator. So we need to appreciate all these stakeholders, what their roles are, but more importantly, to understand that we are all collectively working in partnership. It is a partnership. It is not a every man to himself, and that we're all working together to collectively for mutual benefit of all. So if I may now come to a question specifically, as you are aware, the Central Bank of Nigeria is at the forefront in the promotion of the National Financial Inclusion Agenda. Not that it is a CBN program, it is a national program, but CBN, as in many aspects of our social and economic life, we are providing leadership. And it is from the understanding that for us to strive as a nation, we must make sure that the full benefits offered by the financial system are available to all Nigerians. And also the proposition that we could leverage on our large population size, about 200 million now, and if we use that, we can scale it up and make meaningful contribution if everybody is participating, like we have seen in India, in China. So having established that, we set a very clear target of achieving 80% inclusion by the year 2020. And that was, I think, in 2012, 2013. So within a 7-year window, we wanted to achieve that. So a lot has been done. When it is 2020, we have not gotten to 80% inclusion or 20% exclusion. We are close to that, but again, considering all that has taken place over the intervening years, I have to say that it was a great progress, and which would not have been possible without the contribution of fintech in that regard. So fintech was the key reason for our success, even though to many people it may not look as what we achieved, what we intended to achieve, but we have achieved a lot. So when we are talking about payments, for example, the other alternative would have been to go and build bank branches, brick and mortar in other local governments in Nigeria, which was an invalid proposition. But through fintech, we're able to deploy the high telephony rate in Nigeria, mobile banking. Almost every Nigerian can transact basic banking processes. You can make a deposit, you can make a withdrawal, you can make transfers, make payments which are very critical. We couldn't have done that without the use of fintech. Secondly, the use of also internet banking, for those who have access to internet, has done that. So in simple terms, without technology, without fintech particularly, we could achieve what we intended to achieve. Even if the externalities that came around the issue of the global financial crisis, 2008, 2009, the current pandemic we are facing, the recession, Nigeria and the globally we face, etc., etc. And this has also, especially with the COVID-19 issue, made us become more determined to see fintech as a partner, not only for promoting our own agenda, but also for national economic growth and development. Thank you very much.
You're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you very much.
You're on mute, okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for that insight. You know, and it is interesting because, and Simeon, so this question is for you. This same financial inclusion that we're talking about, it has been an illusion for some years now, you know, because of, even though Nigerian banking system, like somebody said, is one of the best in the world. You know, so somebody said in Nigeria you could put your account number on the web, put it on your website, anything, and nothing will happen. In some countries you can't do that. So Nigeria has gone ahead with respect to that. But this financial inclusion that we're talking about, do you think it should be driven by fintech? So Mr. Ibrahim mentioned it, that, you know, it's mostly for fintech. But if you notice, with the body language of the regulator, especially as they want payment service banks to be driven by mostly the telcos. So do you think it is financial fintech companies that can drive this financial inclusion, telcos, or perhaps the banks themselves that can drive it to be able to make more impact?
Thanks for the question. First and foremost, I think I think we should take a step back and do some reorientation about what a fintech is and how fintech should be categorized. I think the word fintech is being bastardized, and I'll explain what I mean. It is just a technology. It's just finance using technology. That's all it is. It is not, there is no monster sitting somewhere that is called fintech. So when we keep using the word fintech, we forget the fact that banks are also fintechs. We forget the fact that different institutions are fintechs. Financial technology is just a tool that is used when it comes to, is just using technology in finance. That is what fintech is. It's not a startup. It's not a small company. It's not like we make it sound like it's one big monster in the room, and because of that, we should treat it in a certain way. First and foremost, I think that, I mean, that's my opinion. Secondly, driving financial inclusion should be a holistic measure. It should be taken from everywhere. Regulators, it should be taken from banks, and also in quote fintechs. But for me, I think where we all miss it is the fact that we tend to follow a trend without understanding what that trend is about. I mean, right now we have challenger banks, which are majorly microfinance banks that are using mobile apps to run their transactions, but we call them challenger banks because in Europe they are called challenger banks. So for me, I think we should focus on how we can allow more financial more funding into using technology to actually address these small issues. Inclusion is still very, very small because we're not penetrating the areas that we should penetrate. We still use apps. How many people have access to apps? We still focus on, I mean, most fintechs use apps. How many people actually use apps? We still focus on the urban areas, and that's where everybody's focused. All financial services, all inclusion is done within the urban areas. And you're asking yourself, what about these local areas? What about those? How will my grandmom in the village get access to financial services, whether be it using technology or driving other things? And I think it's a holistic measure. It is not going to be driven by fintechs because the fintechs also need to make money for their investors. And because of that, they have to focus on the market that is available, which is that urban market. So if you get the banks to invest in these fintechs like it is done everywhere else, if you get the big players to invest in small technologies that can be spread across the whole ecosystem, then you might not start getting inclusion. But if you leave it to only one in quotes player in industry, which is in quote fintechs, which I hate to use the word fintechs when I'm talking about financial inclusion, but if you leave it to only these up and coming startups that are trying to figure out how to solve small problems in small ways, then we'll never get there in 20 years. But if you get the banks to invest in these new technologies and expand it into the rural areas, then we can just start getting inclusion. I mean, there's USSD. Why are we not in the villages teaching people how to use USSD? There are small, SMS payments that can be done. Why are we not in the villages using that? The PSBs have now come in. Why are we not using airtime, which is a common factor across the industry? Why are we not figuring out a way to use it like M-Pesa is used in Kenya? That way you can now start using it. But if you notice, it takes the entire ecosystem. It cannot be left to just a segment, which is in quotes called fintechs. Hello, you're on mute. I can't hear the question.
Can't hear you.
You know, I thought I was in a non-virtual conference, so I forgot I have to unmute myself. So it's nice that you talk about USSD payment and how it will actually have a lot of impact, but we are not using it as much as we should be. You know, when you talk about what Safaricom did in Kenya and how they are replicating some of those things in other places in the world. But we'll come back to regulations around financial inclusion. I want to go to the learned silk now, and regulation is a big issue with respect to fintech. So we have one of the regulators, someone from regulatory agency here, and recently there has been a talk around whether we need particular regulations or customized particular for these guys to be able to allow them innovate like it is. So in December last year, Senegal became the second country in Africa to pass a startup act. Specifically, the law creates specific support and governance framework for startups, as well as a suitable legal regime for the registration and labeling of startups. Now, do we need a startup act in Nigeria? I know recently that the Finance Act gave a bit of leeway, especially with respect to tax for small companies, so to speak. But for innovation, you do a lot of work with technology companies around tech. If we really want to make that impact, we need an act for that, a particular legislation to address startups.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all my co-panelists and of course everybody that is watching us. Startup is a big issue for us because this is from the numbers that was reeled out by Mr. Ibrahim, saying that we're about 200 million people in Nigeria, and of course trying to reach out to everyone through the FSS 2020, only being able to reach out to 80%. I can say conveniently that in doing this, and even from what Simeon has said, a lot of all these companies are middle-class companies or startup companies. And of course, it will be beneficial for them to be protected seriously because, without protection for them, then whatever it is that they're doing is going to be a problem. So I firmly believe that Nigeria needs a startup act. The enactment of such an act would ensure that a legal framework exists to support startups who are typically small and medium enterprises. And for example, as it relates to fintech startups, such an act ensures or would actually well, ensure the following. One, provision of incentives, such as loans and grants, local content law targeted at benefiting startups, then exemptions from taxation. So if we can include these in that, been a lot now I can give a classical example, and it is without a doubt that Nigeria is blessed with creative and indigenous minds. So many examples of two beautiful Nigerians, which was acquired for over 200 million. And there must have been some form of going back and forth on the legal framework with which they have done. And if we've had a Protection Act for younger ones, it would encourage them to know that whatever it is that they do will be beneficial to them and fully protected. So for me, the Startup Act is not only needed in Nigeria, but it's long overdue. And I hope that it's something that people in the National Assembly can begin to think of. And of course, thank God for forums like this where we're able to discuss things like that. And I'm sure a lot of people who are also regulators are listening. Abroad, they push up laws like this with National Assembly to ensure that people around them, people that are ensuring that both the down line, the middle line, or the upper line are pushing out works are protected. So I feel that Startup Act is what is long overdue in Nigeria. Moderator, over to you.
Forgive me. Thank you very much, Leonard, for that very insightful. Startup Act is important. And I hope Mr. Ibrahim was CBN is also taking note of that. So I just want to move to Rotimi now. Rotimi, you have a lot of experience in the telecommunications industry, and compared to some other industries, that's a heavily regulated industry. You know, even though it has made a lot of impact and it has grown seriously over the years. So my question is this: how has heavy regulations in that industry helped the industry to grow, and how can that success be replicated in the fintech industry, particularly with respect to innovation?
Okay, thank you very much, Kenneth, and good morning to everybody on the webinar. Specifically to your question, I think because of the I don't want to use the word distrust that a lot of people have for government, but unfortunately it looks like I've used it. When people hear regulation, they become extremely wary. They become, unnecessarily worried that, oh, government wants to stamp down on this or stamp down on that. But based on my experience, regulation does not necessarily mean curbing the ability of an industry specifically what the regulation is for. As you've mentioned, the telecoms industry is heavily regulated in Nigeria. It is one of the factors, and I'll tell you why. So there are two ways to look at regulation. I think regulation in general can be divided into two. It could be technical regulation, and it could be market regulation or commercial regulation. So technical regulation, for example, will deal specifically with industry standards. It will deal with specifications. So for fintechs, for example, it will be around what sort of software are you talking about? What do you require the softwares to do? What are the security attributes of the software? So there could be regulations that specifically focus on the technical aspect of the industry. And then there can also be regulations that specifically focus on the market or commercial aspects of the industry. So these are regulations that will look at fair competition, for example. They will look at consumer protection. So if I am a customer of a fintech How is my data protected? How is my information protected? So you can have regulations that target those areas. So regulations does not necessarily mean that you must stifle developments. So let's take a very good example of the Communications Act, which is the main act in the telecoms industry. Now, in issuing regulations, what the act provides for is that the regulator itself, before issuing regulations, must go through certain processes. And a major part of this process involves, the stakeholders will be given an opportunity to comment on the regulation. So say in the regulation, and I think it's for all the stakeholders to be involved in any regulation that is due to the issue pinches, and then they can advise the regulator on the best way to adopt those regulations, what those regulations should target. I know that the CBN, to a large extent, is seeing exposure to get inputs on this regulation before we go ahead and start implementing. So in terms of regulating any industry, I think it is critical that all the stakeholders are involved in any type of regulation. So regulation itself is not necessarily bad. I've always been of the opinion in several forums that I've attended to say, look, regulation must not stifle innovation. Anything that stifles innovation is not good for any industry. So it is important that all stakeholders are involved in the issuing, in the development of regulations, because they are the ones that will be mostly affected. Thank you very much.
And that's an interesting point. Very interesting point you made about all stakeholders being able to be involved. And so it brings me to my next question, really. So a lot of players are able to do it quite well, relatively. Even though the regulatory environment seems to be a bit of struggle. And for one of them, like Paystack, there was news recently that Paystack exited with almost $200 million in quotes, and that's good news coming from Nigeria. So, and my question is for Share. Highlighting Paystack and the success they have made, so we need more of those kind of exits in the industry. If you look around in in America, in China, you hear a lot of these companies worth more than $1 billion, even 50 billion and more. But the industry in Nigeria is nascent, yes, but it has a lot of potential. So for startups and for fintech companies, what is the major attribute of such kind of success? The Paystack success in quotes now, and how can this be replicated in the fintech industry?
Hello, Chuma. Thank you for the question, and I also want to thank all the panelists for having us here. But before I go to the question asked, I just want to address two comments or two raised by two speakers. I'll first start with your first question about having a startup act, and I believe the question was directed to the Learned Silk about the need for a startup act. And I think yes, he says it's nice and it's good, but I think I'm on the other side of this. I think it's not a matter of having a startup act that matters. It's a matter of us going through our laws as is right now and seeing what it makes available. The truth of the matter is this, that what you have are regulations being made. They're not being followed, right? And you have a duplication of it. I'll give you a very good example, a very, very vivid example. If you go to the SME survey that was done in July this year, and when they were trying to attribute what was the problem for startups, it wasn't attributed to regulation, but was down the lower rung. The major problem was infrastructure and finance. Now, access to finance, I think it's one of the issues we'll be discussing towards access to capital, which is the capital market and all whatnot. If you look at our existing laws, does it make it available? Yes, the law is there, but applicability is a totally different thing. So you have the Venture Capitals Act, you have the Smedan Act trying to give inflow to these particular startups. The question should really be not you want to do another. Now, if you have that one, what you will find is that you have another body and you've only duplicated regulatory burdens. Because I'll give a very good example. The new Bofia Act, I'm not sure if you've had time to actually look at it very well. If you have time to look at it, including some certain definitions to maybe banking business or giving the financial institution, it has also straddled some people who do other businesses that are not core banking, but may tilt towards investment advisory, i.e. SEC. Now, what we really need is to identify those particular and find a way of inter-agency collaboration amongst them, right? Not to create a singular act again, because what you know, but when you're creating too many regulatory burdens, what you're doing is you're increasing the barriers to entry for many of these guys. And that's the sincere truth. Now, also, when we come regular, I really want to applaud the CBN. Apart from the PENCOM, NCC, another regulatory agency that particularly well will be the CBN. But then again, what I really want us to do, like I said earlier, is an interagency relationship. Because once we don't have this, what you find is that you find startups having to report to 1, 2, 3, or 4 agencies. And going back again to what are the PwC survey I mentioned to, another core problem they had was not a matter of regulatory, it was a matter of there was no harmonization amongst the regulators. That was their major problem, right? And yes, we need to regulate them because at times when you see a pay stack that maybe does revenues in billions, you may find that they even reach out, their cash flow and their cash reserves are better than many traditional banks. So we need to be careful as to whether we want to create another regulatory body entirely. And I'll give you a very good example and experience about. CBN had its own sandbox exercise going on. SEC has the same thing. And you know what? We've had clients who have had to actually report to both the CBN and the SEC for the same thing. So the Startup Act, I'm really finicky about. But before I go, let me just go straight to the question which you asked, which was about the attributes for a company like Paystack. I'll say, for example, for startups really do well, I think it's a matter of identifying the markets. Now, I know we are in the law and technology interface. We need to look at the LESIX quadrant, which is the market, the law, technology, and the norm. Now, I'll attribute Paystack's success to maybe having a good business model and having a market, or maybe not being product-centric and being more market-centric. And I'll tell you why. They adopted a more of a B2B model, and they came into the market at a time, and they're still raising money at a time where maybe not many were raising at that time. And I will tell you, going forward into this year and next year, for a startup to be quite attributable and to actually do what is significant is they need to take advantage of opportunities. One, Paystack was able to take advantage of an opportunity at that time when they started. The fintech market was still maybe in its nascent stages, and some people will still argue that we are still growing and we're not yet there. But they took advantage of some certain policies. And another thing they took advantage of was the demographic shift. Now, what you find, and I'll applaud people to read, there was a McKinsey report that was issued maybe some 2 months or a month ago, and was able to attribute the success of these startups to several things. But one that was critical was the demographic shift amongst people. Now, it found that the Nigerian population was largely under 30. And young people want new customer experience, want to try new technology. And again, the technology also helped it. Digital penetration, increase in internet usage. Now, all attributed to that particular fact. And going forward, they were able to use all these opportunities created by, or let me say, macroeconomic opportunities to app on it and make a very good product, which everybody uses right now. Now, another thing we may going forward into our advise other MSMEs, particularly startups, to take on role is that going to next year, macroeconomic disruptions will keep coming. Number one is, first of all, a recession is as it. Number two, consumer spending will maybe increase, will make most likely decrease. They want cheaper products, right? Another third thing we want is that lack of, I won't say lack of trust, but a reducing trust amongst, if you look at the survey, amongst traditional banks. Now, these are things that startups like which Flutterwave and also Paystack has done to actually buy the loyalty and the patronage of this population, to look at demographic shifts, and also to even raise the finance and attract finance. It's also imperative to look at the macroeconomics in terms of shifts from investors' attitude from fixed income investment to equities. And these opportunities, I believe, we can use and also drive to drive the process going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Shay. Thank you for that wonderful insight. And so when you were talking, you used the opportunity to talk a bit about capital, and it's actually true that capital is very important, especially for this industry. And that brings me to my next question with Angel. So Angel, you're also aware of so it's looking like there's a rush for Africa, right? Fintech companies or tech companies generally. But the truth is that to be able to make the kind of impact that African fintech companies need to make, they need to have that access to capital, which Shay has mentioned when he was talking about. So for companies like Alibaba, even before they started, for the first 6 months, they probably raised a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, even before the company started like that. So, and today they are one of the biggest companies in the world. So capital is very important. Now, my question is, how can, capital raising in Nigeria is an issue, particularly at seed stage. So a lot of companies would rather have access to a lot of capital when they are doing a Series A or a Series B round. But for seed stage, for early seed stage, it's always a bit difficult for African startups. How can Africa attract more funds and more capital, for the fintech companies in Africa? And while you're also answering that, I also, wanted to, you could also touch a bit about Paystack and how they've been successful and answer, that question. So it's like a 2-in-1 question for Angel.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here today, calling from the East Coast of the United States. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the panelists. So far, great insights that I've heard from what we're talking about. So look, I'll just start out very simply. Access to capital is hard, regardless of where you are in the world. I know you used the example of Alibaba. Fine, because we all know the story. But for every Alibaba, there are hundreds of thousands of companies that are on the struggle of trying to raise capital at the earlier stage. Doesn't matter where you are, whether you are in Africa, in Nigeria, in the United States, in New York, in Silicon Valley, there are hundreds of thousands of companies looking for that golden ticket that will give them the initial kickstart capital to get them going. So there is, I'm not going to talk about what that magic pill is because there isn't any, but a number of things that gentlemen before me said that is critically important for any startup, whether this is an entrepreneur that has their first startup or their 10th startup, is big enough problem in terms of access to a market, right? Thinking about the solution to that problem and then building it. And by building it, I don't mean necessarily building it from the point of view of I have to have the full front to back stack of everything that I need to solve that problem for that market at the right time, because that's another critical thing, at the right time. But you need to start incrementally getting there in terms of what you need to start out with. So it might not be that you need hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to get it going, but prove it, build it and prove it. And then from there, find a support structure. And some of the other gentlemen that were on here mentioned a couple of critical things, whether it's the Startup Support Act, right? Or having I'll use the word which tends to take termed out, but I mean, depending on where you are in Nigeria, is having the right support from accelerators, mentors, sponsors that have access, not only to capital, but also to a network, right? And capital doesn't have to always be dollar capital. It could be human capital. There are many companies that get started that don't have the initial access to that capital to get them from that idea stage to that POC, but they have access to human capital, which is critically important to allow companies to get on that path that eventually will get into that $100,000 check, that $200,000 check. So I wanted to be very clear that it's not just a Nigeria problem or an Africa problem. It is a worldwide problem, getting access to capital. Yes, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's harder in the US. No, there is probably, because of just the network of capital that's here in the United States. I'm just using the United States because here's where I'm from. But you could talk about Europe, you could talk about Asia. But yes, maybe because the pot is bigger, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that it's still easier, right? There's still things that need to happen to get there. The final thing that I want to say, as it relates to PayStack, they've done it right. So if you look at their story, I wouldn't worry about the Alibaba story, or understanding what Alibaba did or what Amazon did. Because Jeff Bezos, if you read the Amazon story, which, I'm taking it now to the US version of it, when he started his company, he started $50,000 checks at a time until he raised his first $1 million for Amazon at a time when no one understood what the internet was about. So if you really want to understand a story, you could read his story as well, of how he took Amazon from an idea concept, leaving a Wall Street job, to going into a pretty much closet office and raising $50,000 checks at a time, while incrementally building what is now the Amazon that we know today. So going back to the PayStack, I think their view is that they did it right. They figured out a market with a big enough problem, took advantage of timing, because timing is of the essence as well, and then build that upon that. So when you look at their story and understand where they are today, I would kind of look back, because I think it's always important to not always attach yourself or your particular startup story to any particular company, but understand how they did it, because there are lessons to be learned in terms of how a company like that did it. But I would also understand that we need to leverage the ecosystem that we have in front of us, wherever you are in the world. You need to understand the on-the-ground ecosystem of the people that are there that can help empower and move you along that journey. But then as you start thinking about, all right, well, I've created now a solution in Nigeria. What do I need to do to get it out into the world? Maybe not to solve the world's problems. Maybe this is a very specific Nigeria or Africa diaspora problem, but I need to understand that the world knows about it, so that way they could see the where this is going, and they can see how that what applies to Nigeria could apply to other parts of the world as well. And that's when you start getting interest from outside investors, just saying, wait a minute, they solved the problem locally that's big. How can I take that and replicate that? How can I potentially use that in other parts of Africa or in other countries that could probably take advantage of similar products that are being put out there? So I'm going to pause there for a second.
That's interesting.
Can I just add to what you just said?
Sorry, somebody, you're breaking up.
Yes, so I don't know if you can hear me clearly.
I could.
Can you hear me clearly? Okay, cool. I'm just going to put up my video just so that I don't lose data. Adding to what Angel said, and funding in Africa or Nigeria, as the case may be, I think it goes beyond just looking for funds. Like this is my third rodeo.
We lost Simeon.
Oh, is it just me or?
I lost Simeon.
Oh, so when we can hear him, we'll probably take that comment that he was going to make. But I was going to come back to Mr. Ibrahim from CBN. We always like it when we have regulators around. And my question is on digital bank. So there's CUDA, a lot of things are already happening in that space. And when are we going to see a digital bank act? Because a lot of banks are going digital now. You can open an account with your phone without having to walk into a bank. And truth is, there are some things that affect them that will not affect the traditional brick and mortar bank. So when are we going to see a digital bank act? And so you answered that question side by side with the Payment Service Bank. Recently, the guidelines for PSB was reviewed, and when it initially came out, there was a lot of comments about how stringent the requirements are, the capital requirements, and all those other factors that they need to put side by side with the fact that banks can't even lend. So, the possibility of them making as much money as traditional banks is not really there. So how, for payment service banks, don't you think there's a more liberal approach? And I say this because, PSBs came as a result of what Safaricom did in Kenya, and they made a lot of impact. Now, when India tried to replicate it and came up with these huge stringent requirements for companies to get their PSB license, it became difficult. So now that industry is still struggling a bit. And the Nigerian guidelines seem to follow what India did. So is there a more liberal approach that we can expect, or is it something that after a few years we won't see that impact happening?
Well, thank you very much. I think it's a very important observation you have made, and it's something we need to discuss. But let us put this in the context. Again, I need to go back a little bit to the question of regulator that you put together, to Rotimi. Yes, traditionally, the regulator is always seen as a stumbling block. Somebody who is not interested in innovation, who is trying to stifle innovation, who is bringing problems. But that we must have a paradigm shift, both from the perspective of the regulator himself and also the whole ecosystem. The regulator, particularly, if I may speak for the CBN, has recognized that, look, this ecosystem is in our best interest to see a lot of movement, a lot of traction, a lot of innovation, not only from the perspective of national economic growth and development, but also in promoting our own agenda. It is interesting that the first question you asked was about financial inclusion. So at the very beginning, the CBN understood that, look, for us to do what we wanted to do in financial inclusion, yes, technology has to play a significant role in this. But again, not only in that, you also talk about rich tech, the internet business process of the regulator himself. How do we do AML, anti-money laundering, KYC, etc.? We need technology to assist us do that. Even core central banking functions, macroeconomic modeling, predictive analysis, big data analysis, early warning systems, whether it is about exchange rate stability, price stability, they're all issues that the regulator is concerned about. However, the most important thing for us at the Central Bank of Nigeria, where once we're talking about technology, whether it is fintech, whether it is innovation in the fintech space, we are guided by 5 important pillars, which I think will summarize the whole conversation to understand the approach. That as a regulator, we have a very important role in creating an enabling environment, practicing regulatory openness, playing a role in ensuring talent and availability, a role in access to capital and sustained demand. Now, again, this is the ecosystem approach to the whole discussion. Because if care is not taken, we can make a lot of assumptions that we'll later find out are not true. Talent availability, as obvious as it sounds, we tend to assume that there will always be these talents that are here, that will remain here, that will always be coming with the next Flutter wave, the next Pace tag. No. There must be a conscious effort to make sure that, look, this talent is nurtured and is encouraged to stay within this ecosystem for us to get the benefits. Before you know it, everybody will move to Canada or anywhere for that matter. So, Central Bank of Nigeria, what are we doing? We have done a lot of work with tertiary institutions in Nigeria by setting up centers of excellence that have the specific function of ensuring that we attract, we train, and we create the environment for these people to stay in. Sustained demand. This is for the fintechs to look at. Even though most of the attention is based on lending, on payments, I think from my own perspective, where we are going to obtain sustained demand, a very green market is in MSME. Fintechs need to start looking at what kind of product services are you going to address to MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises? Because as it is now, these are the people that are the losers in the banking revolution in Nigeria, either because of their portfolio is so low, it is too expensive for them, they're not considered important. But again, it is a bottom of the pyramid thing. If you can scale on that, that is very important. So that is the very place where I'm going to see sustained demand. The traditional way of getting sustained demand may not work for us. So we're working on that, and FSS 2020 is doing a lot in that regard, ensuring collaboration between us, the organized private sectors, MED, and all the other agencies involved, and also the micro, small, medium enterprises bodies. Access to capital, right? So Angel said something very important. It is very important. And again, to buttress the point about MSMEs, the last MSME survey 2017 identified 41.5 million micro, small, medium enterprises in Nigeria. So just think about that from the point of sustained demand, right? So access to the Central Bank of Nigeria is doing a lot of things, not only from the regulatory sandbox approach we are looking, we're also looking about development of incubators, and not only access to funding from there, but also role modeling them, also issues of intellectual property, issues of regulation, how they are networking and development, okay, public accelerator programs, innovation labs, incubators, and we need to provide mentoring, access to capital, training, networking, marketing and career opportunities, and of course, intellectual property issues, data patent protection issues need to be addressed. So in summary, these are some of the things as a regulator we are trying to do, and I think it would be more helpful to look at whatever we are doing in the context of these 5 pillars. As much as possible, we are going to promote that agenda.
Oh, it appears we lost Mr. Ibrahim there. It appears he's on mute. No, it appears we lost him.
That framework, right? And encourage people to come into that framework, those startups to come into that framework and to build, but ensuring that we're protecting the public while we're at it, it can be very successful. I think some of the problems that we see here in the United States is because we have so many regulators, banking alone, you have it at the federal level, at the state level, in some cases at even the city level. It makes it very hard sometimes for that to happen because it's a lot more restrictive than when you might have one regulator that's really set. And I look at the UK. UK has done a fantastic job. Well, now with Brexit, that might be a different story, but have done initially a fantastic job within the fintech space because they provided that opportunity, that sandbox opportunity for people, for startups to go and really try to evolve and work out and really work with the banking sector to try to test different things. And that's why you see challenger banks coming out of there because they're so fast forward. You don't see that in the US because it's hard. Because if you're going to go and do something in New York, well, now I need to worry about what I need to do in California and other areas. But I think if regulators really focus on their regions or their markets and provide that framework and that protection, of course, protection on both sides, and allow then the innovators to come in and be able to really test their innovations and see how it could work and how it could impact the market and the customers. I think that's a great opportunity. So I just wanted to echo on that because I think it's very important.
Valid point, yeah.
Thank you very much, Angel, for coming in there, and Mr. Ibrahim for your deep insights. I want to move a bit and talk about data protection because most fintech companies process a lot of data, personal data, and all that. And data protection and privacy is becoming a major issue in Nigeria. So this next question is for the learned still. Does the Nigerian data protection regulation address concerns of personal data and data protection in Nigeria? Do you think that it is sufficient kind of data that is being processed, particularly amongst fintech companies? Or do you think the regulation needs to go further than what it probably is?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure all the participants and of course the panelists would agree that there's a lot of data going up and down Nigeria. And of course, from the figures being ruled out from a couple of the panelists, you know that there's active and huge usage of data in Nigeria. And of course, one of the agencies that is meant to do that is the NDPR. And for me, the NDPR, to a commendable extent, addresses issues of data protection in Nigeria. As Nigeria's only standalone regulation on data protection, it aptly covers the following issues in data protection sphere. And you know, some of the things that they cover are: one, lawful processing, which is under Section 22 of NDPR 2019, which goes for addressing issues as regards the data subject has given consent to the processing of his or her personal data for one or more specific purposes. Also, obligations of data collectors, which are the fintechs, the banks, you know, the people that are heavily involved in collecting data. Also, we have rights of data subject, which is rights to demand for data in possession of data controller, right of deletion or to be forgotten, rights to object to processing of one's data, right to rectification of errors in one's data, right to withdraw consent for data processing, and rights to object to marketing of one's data. And of course, we need to know that the NDPR is commendable for protecting key privacy rights of Nigerians as outlined in what I've said. However, I need to mention that the regulation, or in the event of the enactment of a substantive regulation on data protection, well, the following issues must be addressed, because I do not think that everything has been covered. Now we have the issue of the scope. The NDPR only protects data processing of Nigerians. Consequently, the regulations does not extend protection to foreign non-residents. Thus, for example, because in the form of outsourcing data processing to Nigeria are protected by the regulations, an obvious failure in meeting international privacy standards, in contrast to, of course, what we have in the GDPR as extraterritorial provisions governing such outsourcing needs. Also, I must say that the status of NDPR, which we have issues when, well, legally, when we begin to speak about whether it's a legislation or whether it's an act or whether it's a law, there are usually issues. It has been said in so many ways that the efficacy of the provisions of the NDPR is watered down as it is not a legislation. And you know, because of that, in the event of a conflict between legislation and statute, we all know that the latter prevails. And for example, the provision of Cybercrimes Act 2015 on release of personal data pursuant to court orders and statutory fines will take precedence over this same NDPR, which is a legislation that was saying and decrying the making of regulations by the executive aimed at achieving excessive discretion on matters of privacy rights, like the UNCHR noted. And I wanted to make a quote, which UNHCR noted. It says, several states also require that the legal framework be established through primary legislation debated in Parliament rather than subsidiary legislation enacted by the executive in accordance with Article 25 of International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. And well, so many people will say we do not need more legislations or more acts. But of course, for me, it's obvious that you need to revamp some of these things. Another part I need to mention is the independence of NISTA. And because we also do not pay a lot of attention to NISTA, and by the provisions of Section 1, subsection 3 of NISTA, it's mandatory that the agency responsible for administering the regulation, you know, the relevant minister under the NISTA Act 2007 is however empowered to give general directions to the agency as to its function. I also must say that there is insufficient deterrent measures. And if you notice, if you say there are data protection issues and the big giants who you give your data to do stuff which is in contravention to your rights, we say, let's give an example of maybe it's Facebook, a Netflix, or a Google, or an Amazon. And what we have, in Nigeria, which is their fine maximum, if there's anything that is wrong in what they've done, it's 20 million naira. So imagine you're finding Facebook or Netflix or Google or Amazon that has over $2.3 trillion to play with, and then you find them. Of course, your data that you have, can be used for whatever they please. And so for us now, we need to revamp what we have in an NDPR. And what we have, although, which is good enough, it protects people. And unfortunately, a lot of people do not even know that the data collectors, they have obligations to you. Us that are the subjects that they throw around our data up and down, and we do not also even know our rights. And so for me, there's a need or a bid for a lot of more exposure or more awareness to be given to these issues. And so NDPR, well, is doing its own best as regards personal data and data protection. But then, like I said, they still need to, in case there's an opportunity for it to be revamped, then we need to look at those things which I've mentioned, which is the scope and every other thing, to ensure that, particularly when it comes to the deterrence measure, also should be tweaked. Over to you, moderator, please. I don't know if the moderator is still listening.
You're still mute.
I was saying it's interesting that you mentioned about the revamping the NDPR, and so it brings me to my next question, which is for Rotimi actually. And so recently, mobile money accounts in Uganda were hacked, and about $3.2 million was carted away with in court. So cybersecurity is a major issue, put in place with data protection. So how can our data protection regulations and cybersecurity be more effective to ensure that customers' accounts are secure? Because as we talk about mobile money, as we try to push the telcos to join, they have a lot of data, they have a lot of information. And how can this be protected, particularly with respect to hack and cyber threats? Rotimi.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. The Learned Silk just discussed some of the provisions of the NDPR, and I think I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can
hear you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay. Thank you. I was saying that the Learned Silk just discussed the provisions of the NDPR, which sort of sets up my response to your question. Now, the NDPR, in terms of the protection of, unfortunately for Nigeria, we don't have a single comprehensive legislation on data protection, as mentioned by the Learned Silk. But the NDPR does its best, right, in making provisions for protection of personal data, even though it's a regulation and not not what we would have preferred. But even with that, and because it was made pursuant to the NIDA Act, even with that, there are provisions that attempt to deal with situations of hacking and unauthorized access to personal data, leading to fraud or loss of money, as you have mentioned in the Ugandan case. Now, there are two responsibilities in instances like this, and I think it is important for everybody to understand how this works. So there's the responsibility of the data controller and the data processor. And then there's the responsibility of the customer who has provided the personal information to the fintech, by which it is accessing those services. Now, the responsibilities of the data controller, and in this case, the provider of the service, maybe the mobile money operator or the fintech, is to ensure that there are both technical and administrative protection for the personal information that is provided. And this is expressly provided in the NDPR. So it's not just to say that you have technical protection for the information. You must have technical protection in terms of encryption, in terms of how processes are structured, in terms of equipment you have, but then you must also have administrative protection for the personal information. Administrative protection deals around authorization of access, who has access to that information, and how that information is dealt with, and how that information is either collected, and how it is stored, and who can access that information. That is the responsibility of the data controller or the data processor, in this case, the fintech or the mobile money provider. But then also there's the responsibility of the customer also to ensure that it keeps the information that it uses to access the services safe. So there are two levels, and those two levels are important. Now, it now means that there's a responsibility on everybody to make sure that customers are properly educated. Because you see, unless there's a problem in either the technical aspect of the security or the administrative aspect of the security, or the consumer itself has not kept the information properly, before hackers can be successful. So it is important that everybody does their part. And the consumer is educated on how to keep the information. I know one of the targets, for example, for financial inclusion is to serve the unbanked and the unserved. And then, you are looking at rural areas where the level of understanding of these things are not as high as you and I expect. So it is critical that the service providers provide that level of education to the consumers so that they are ready. But then also, NIDA also conducts regular audits. And these audits not just deals with the technical aspects, services that are provided, also deals with the project. So for example, NIDA, pursuant to the NDPR, expects that when it does these audits, the service provider is able to show that it has adequate data protection policies. So this is different from the technical aspect, that it has adequate data protection policies in place that protect the information of its consumers. So in terms of hacking, look, unless we want to deceive ourselves, people would always look for an opportunity to breach systems. It is not what you do to protect the systems that is important. And that is what the NDPR has done. And then also, let's remember also, there's the Cybercrime Act, which has various provisions on, in fact, it specifically deals with unlawful access or interference with computer systems. And it is important, that businesses also take into consideration the provisions of the Cybercrime Act when they are setting up their systems. So they are not open to the penalties that will be a consequence of any breach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rotimi, for that, for talking at length about the provisions of the NDPR and what NIDA is doing, and how we can also protect data for most of the fintech companies. So Simeon tripped off a bit. You were going to say something, and I know you want to have that opportunity to talk. But while you mentioned that, there's a question I just wanted to ask so that you could answer it together. So there's been a lot of foreign capital for the tech industry, and this is taking us back a bit because we are talking about capital at that time. And the truth is, when this foreign capital comes into most of these fintech companies, a part of their ownership goes with it. So at the end of the day, you realize that some of these companies are actually foreign owned, maybe not fully foreign owned, but mostly foreign owned. Y Combinator usually does, I think, $150,000 for 7%, and some foreign companies like that. And back home in Nigeria, there's not much activity with respect to investment, Nigerians being able to invest in tech as it is. So what do you think is the reason for this, and how can we have more homegrown capital investment in tech companies?
Thank you very much. Yeah, just to quickly rush back to what Angel said, and to try and qualify a bit what he was trying to say. When it comes to investments and funding of African startups, these are the in quotes success of Paystack and some of the startups that are coming on board. You realize that there's a big divide. Paystack is not a Nigerian company. I hate it when people say Paystack is a Nigerian company and Paystack. No, they just have two co-founders that have Nigerian blood running in them. It's not a Nigerian company. It was never run like a Nigerian company. It is nowhere near what a Nigerian company does look like. This is my third rodeo running companies, and I've had a previous exit in the past. And one thing I've always learned is that if you try to run a business like, in quotes, the Nigerian business, you're going to be bedeviled with a lot of things that has to do with, bureaucracy. You have to do certain things based on CAMA laws. You have to do certain things based on the traditional way things are done. You have to register a company. You have to do certain. You have to reach certain kind of understanding with your shareholders, because that's what they understand. They understand buying and selling. A Nigerian doesn't understand technology, in quotes, and it becomes a problem because you don't understand what it means. Paystack, if they had published their financials, might never have made money, but they are now worth $200 million, or they sell 200 million plus. And a typical Nigerian investor does not understand this. I've had to sit down with my investors to explain to them, hey, we are growing in numbers. Take, for instance, Kuda. Kuda just raised some funds. And what you see in their pitch is, hey, we have 250,000 monthly active users. An investor in Nigeria doesn't understand. What does that mean? Convert it to Naira and Kobo. How much have I made? How much are we talking about? And because of that, you figure out that there's a difference in ecosystem. There's a difference in understanding of what is actually happening. I just came out from Silicon Valley. When I'm pitching to an investor, I'm telling the investor where the future lies, what the future has to hold for to build, and how we can build services upon gaining value based off of customer numbers. So, for instance, if I run a service and I have 1 million customers using my service, I might not be making money from that 1 million customers, but I'm looking at a situation where I can operate loans later on. I can operate other services later on that will now make me money for the company. And that's what an investor is looking at. An investor is looking at 10 years down the line, can this company become something valuable that I can sell? 10 years down the line, can it become something worthy that I can say, yes, I have invested in this company? Not a Nigerian investor that is asking you every month, how much I share. It is a continuous occurrence in this space. I have spoken to all sorts of investors, and that is where the problem is. Paystack was built from day one with the understanding that they were going to sell the company to Stripe. If you open Paystack and open Stripe, you see that it's a mirror image of each other. They were building a Stripe for Africa, and from day one, Shola has always said, I'm building Stripe for Africa. So the understanding that from day one, sold to Stripe instead of Stripe moving its own infrastructure to Africa, because Stripe at one point will want to expand. The same thing most other companies, most other startup founders are now thinking about it. When you start up a business, you look at the foreign land, you look at the US, you look at Europe, which company can want to come in one day to sponsor us out? Which company can we prepare ourselves for so that when they come, they acquire us? And that's what we're thinking about. Nobody's thinking about building a Nigerian company that would have Nigerian investors because they don't understand it. And that is being plain and simple. Truthfully, they do not understand how it works. And you will spend more time trying to explain to them how it works. you get to sit down in shareholders meetings and talking to your investors, and the first thing they ask you is, wait, yes, we have 1 million customers. Why are you spending so much money trying to get? They don't understand what CAC to LTV is. They don't understand what cost of acquisition is. How do you explain to an investor that doesn't understand what you're talking about? It becomes a problem. So I think first you have to have the investors' knowledge. You have to have a trained investors to actually invest in a startup. And that is where we have to start from. A lot of investors are moving towards that trend, but you also see a lot of funds coming from abroad. Yes, they are operated locally and they are employing local people, but it's still a foreign company coming to look for a way to locally invest in African startups. And that is how the trend is moving. If local companies, I mean, if I walk into the richest man in Africa today, I don't know what I'm going to pitch to him. The truth. If I walk into an Elon Musk or I walk into a Jeff Bezos, I understand how to pitch to him. But if I'm walking into the richest man in Africa, I'm walking into a rich billionaire in Nigeria, I don't understand how to pitch, because what he's going to ask me is, I sell crude, I buy crude. Crude is 20 naira. I have made this amount. How do I calculate my gain? Now, I am not selling human beings, neither am I selling customers. So how do I interpret that? So it becomes the big problem, and that's the challenge most startup founders face. I belong to Founders Institute, and I talk to startups every day. And this is a big problem. Number two, for us to have successes in this space, we're not going to look for, and I keep telling my tech brothers, my tech co-founders, we're not looking for big wigs or people that have made money in the public sector or as politicians or as industrialists in Nigeria. We're not looking for them to invest. We have to start reinvesting what we are doing as we sell our companies. Most of these companies must be sold. Most of them must be a lot of exits for them to start being a reinvesting of these funds. If you wait for this, you just said it, somebody said it the other time, the Nigerian age bracket for the highest age bracket in the Nigerian system today is 30 and below. That's the highest population you have right now is 30 and below. Now, if you are waiting for the 60s, the 50s and above to come and reinvest into something they don't understand, they don't even understand that you are working, they don't understand what it means to work remotely. And you're trying to explain to them how to invest remotely. Like, it makes no sense. You cannot teach people, you can't teach people that makes sense. So what we have to do is figure out how to exit, build your company towards an exit as fast as you can, take that money and reinvest a portion of it back into the ecosystem, because you understand what you have suffered. You understand how you have suffered to actually make this thing work. So a Shola, for instance, can bring in $1 million and reinvest. Aboyeji is doing the same thing with his future fund. He's bringing in funds that he has earned from Andela, from other places to reinvest. If I sell my company, I'm going to bring back money to reinvest. That's the only way this thing can work. If you're going to wait for people to start investing, it's not going to work. So when people say they're begging, they don't understand how Nigeria has 20 billionaires and they're not reinvesting. They will never reinvest, except you want to go into oil and gas and trading. You want to go and buy and sell, you will reinvest. If you invest in tech, that they don't even understand what it means, then, sorry.
Simeon, I like the perspective that you bring to it. Find a way to exit and then reinvest a portion of it, to upcoming startups. That's a very good perspective. And so it brings me to share, and I think we are rounding off now. For the audience, if you have questions, you can raise your hand, or you can type your question in the question and answer segment, and then you direct it to a particular panelist what your question is, and then to which panelist is your question directed to. So Shay, we've heard a lot today. We've heard about regulation. We've talked about regulation. We've talked about capital. We've talked about how the things that need to be done with respect to fintech. With respect to regulation, we've talked about the NDPR, the guidelines from some of our regulators like CBN. But do you do you think it, from your own perspective, that this fintech ecosystem is being overregulated? So these guys already are dealing with the kind of MSME in Nigeria is dealing with, and then they still have to look at the NDPR, they still have to look at the CBN guidelines with respect to what they're trying to do or what business they're trying to do. So do you think it's overregulated or just more liberal?
Okay. Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear. I can hear you.
Okay, so I'll just pause just to go a little bit back on the NDPR. I just wanted to, like, I kind of align myself with what Learned Silk said, and I just want to advise that to us, because he had made mention of the fact that we need a robust act, and I think there's one already being presented by NIMC. And even though it's not been said to the answer, but it may be a good thing to look at it and see how it may either solve some of the problems you had mentioned. And also just to speak to Simeon, that it's finally nice to meet Simeon electronically, in the sense that we've exchanged mails a couple of times, but we never met. I've never even seen his face, right? But nice finally meeting you. And I think I totally agree with everything you've said. It's the same thing we keep hammering about. At may come a time where we need to create our own, maybe some sort of Nigerian ecosystem for VCs and private equity, because you keep bringing all these dollars into Nigeria, operating, you operate and make your money in Nigeria. You're supposed to give returns in dollars. The mismatch will always be to is that in Italy. First of all, like Rotimi had said, don't look regulation as problematic. The truth of we need regulation. Majority of this, some of these financial technology companies you talk about, like I said, their cash flows are way better than many brick and mortar financial institutions. So yes, I believe they should be regulated, but over regulation, I believe we are almost getting there. And the reason is this: it's simple. We are in a situation where our regulators do not speak to each other. That interagency collaboration is just not there. And another thing about regulation is we need to prepare regulations in such a way that it doesn't increase barriers to entry and shut out people. What am I saying? I will take, for example, many of the issues that particularly the CBN has brought out. Yes, novel regulations, wonderful innovations, but do they actually solve problem or create problem for startups? To an extent, yes. In terms of capital requirements, that's one. It's a huge problem. So a typical tech company, their sunk cost is not so much. But if their sunk cost in developing technology is not as much, or even is as much as the regulatory capital requirements, then there's a problem. Another thing is we keep finding a situation whereby we keep straddling regulators on the similar issue, But what we need to see is a situation whereby we can see how we can maybe reduce the barriers. A good example was at the time when we had mobile money operators that they had to get, it was almost as though, yes, they needed to go and get a VAS license, but there was some conversation between NCC and CBN that said, okay, it's not necessary you have to have a VAS license, but at least maybe integrate with another company that has a VAS license. Now, such interagency collaboration is very, very required. It's essential. And another I want us to do as regulators is, rather than multiply regulations upon regulations, let's look back at what we have so far, right? And harmonize. Are we overregulated? Not yet, but we are getting close to being overregulated. And the more regulation we put in place, the more burdensome it will be for startups to even enter the market, not to talk of operating in that market. Over to you, moderator.
We are overregulated. We are super overregulated.
Simon has a different view. You want to...
Can I just add something? Okay.
Okay, everybody wants to say something. Well, but quickly, moderator, for me, look, it is a give and take thing. It is a balancing act. And sometimes it's very unfair on the regulators sometimes, but we understand as part of the job. Yes, we want to make our life easy as the operator, but don't forget, consumer protection is very important for us. So you're not the only person I'm looking at. We want to make your life easy, to innovate, to do new things, but it is other people in the financial system that we need to protect. And for us, Central Bank of Nigeria, particularly with our financial inclusion agenda, let me make this confession. It is more dicey for us because of the reputational risks associated with fintech particularly. So we don't want to take the cautious approach ordinarily, but again, we must create this balancing act. We'll encourage innovation, but not at the expense of trust and confidence in the system, not at the expense of financial system stability. So we need to appreciate the tension between the two. Thank you very much. Sorry for the interruption.
Thank you. No interruption at all. We're glad that you came in there. Rotimi wanted to say something on this point.
Yes, so I wanted to add to what Shayat said on the issue of regulation. And you know, in your question, I think earlier in the event, you had asked me, based on my experience of what happens in the telecoms industry, the importance of regulation. What I would like to say is, in terms of regulation, it is important that the different industry regulators collaborate. And I think that is the point that Sheye is making. It is extremely important that they collaborate. And I will tell you that, based on my experience from telecoms, at the inception, when licenses were issued and there was rollout, there was always friction between the operators who were NCC licensees and other operators. So they would fight with the town planning people. They would have issues with NESRIA. They would have issues with customs until NCC started reaching out to other regulators to say, look, we all want the industry to grow. We don't want to be at loggerheads. Let us collaborate. And then I know that for a fact that the NCC ended up signing several MOUs. In fact, I think there's an MOU between the NCC and the CBN. Those are the kind of things that all industry needs. There must be a multi-sectoral approach to regulations, because if people sit in silos, it will become obstacles for the operators in whatever the industry is. So look, when it comes to technology, technology straddles all areas and everybody wants to get involved. I know CBN is particularly interested in ensuring that, you know, our monies are kept safe. NCC would also tell you that people that are sitting on networks of telcos, they also need to regulate. So they need to talk to each other. If not, it will be chaos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rotimi, for that insight. So just take questions and answers. For want of time, sorry, we may not be able to go on very far, but we'll take questions. And I think we have two questions right now. One for Mr. Ibrahim from Central Bank and another one for the Leonard Silk. We'll take that of the Leonard Silk first. Dayo Pashino is asking, do you think that Nigerians are protected at all against foreign data exploitation?
Can I ask?
I think someone is saying something. Sorry, moderator, somebody was saying something at the background.
Before.
So the question says, do you think Nigerians against foreign data exploitation? You know, you talked about the NDPR when you were answering one of the questions.
No, I heard your question. I was hearing somebody else on the background saying something. Anyway, for me, Nigerians are particularly.
Yeah, I said something. I said, let me say something.
Okay, please speak up, sir.
Hello, Miwa. I said, let me say something before you speak.
Please speak, sir.
Yes, I said, I think that we first clear the air around data protection. It's like we are so engrossed in trying to protect our data when the data is already public. So it's like we are so glued as trying to do something. Our data is already out there. I think we are putting on We already have our data everywhere. If you use a mobile phone, your data is everywhere. If you use a laptop without a device already, so you should be very conscious of not enjoying life because we are so afraid that our data is everywhere. That's just. Hello, I don't know if you heard me. Hello.
Yeah, we heard you. Okay.
You hear me? I said people are so conscious of not wanting to enjoy life because they are so afraid their data is being compromised. So they don't want to enjoy life. Enjoy life. Use the services that are available to you to make your life easier, and don't try to overprotect yourself. I mean, we are so hung up on data protection, but your
So I think I understand what he's talking about. You know, sometimes everybody, and particularly for the older folks, actually, I think the fear is more for the older folks, thinking whether their information is protected or not. Of course, and the question, maybe if I can just expand it, is not necessarily limited to foreigners alone, right? Or foreign companies alone. It's also extended to all of us in Nigeria, you know, and then of course the people or companies in Nigeria as it is. And for me, I think everybody usually, based on what you use, whatever form of data you give out or chunk out, those, although I've heard a lot of people talk about regulators being very stringent on regulation, there are really simple, basic protections that everybody has been given. But sometimes when we click on yes, I can imagine how many people, even on the phones or the laptops that you use, right? Imputing your data, imputing your information, all those long list of 20 pages that they'll give to you. How many people actually has ever read it? Maybe, of course, apart from a few of us have had issues, you know, to protect clients, and then you see that there are layers and layers and layers of contractual documents that you've entered into that you don't even know. But like my other friend mentioned, that please, irrespective of whether you're protected, of course, not to do it in an unsafe way. Enjoy life, as you have said, but I can guarantee you that every of these foreign companies, whenever they come, except they're coming to do what you call the spying on you, right? Most, and even if they're going to do that on you, right, they're going to use your information for things like that. There are still laws regulating it, and I know that's part of the function of NISTA. They ensure that all the collaborations and all the people that have, of course, NCC also is involved. A lot of other financial tech companies are also involved. So there are layers beyond what all of us can see, of course, apart from those of us that work with them. Beyond what the eyes can meet, there are really layers and layers of regulations that have been put in place, apart from, of course, the non-ethical hacking that has been done, but that is being carried out. But even if it's an ethical hack, there's also a protection that is done for you. And you know, it all takes one person to raise a highbrow to say that this is a problem. And then you see companies, Fortune 500 companies going down because of an ethical issue. So I need to mention that we're actually protected from those foreign data exploitation because their laws sometimes are stringent. We don't have an harmonization of all of our laws here. I agree with what Cheyenne mentioned as regards not having to really reinvent every other will. There's so many laws that are on ground are protecting all of us. But then, of course, in between those layers of laws protection, there are still other laws that still protect those people or the companies that are doing anything in Nigeria. And I need to say we're safe and please use it. But if you have the time, read off that 20-pager and then you see that your rights are actually really protected. But once you click on it, trust me, there's always a way around it. I see the older men on the panel actually laughing. The younger ones will not particularly bother about some of these things. Over to you, moderator. Thank you.
Can I add something, please? Can I? Go ahead. Okay, so I was just going to say, in response to the question, I was just going to say that one of the interesting things that I found out also is for those of us who have read the GDPR, that's the General Data Protection Regulation that applies in the EU. With regards to the fears that we have about foreign data exploitation, now, this data of Nigerians that are stored in the EU are subject to the GDPR. So wherever you are collecting the data from, a lot of these multinationals that store your data in the EU are subjected to the provisions of the GDPR, and these are very stringent provisions. So there are specific obligations on data controllers and data processors. So if they take your data, as somebody who goes online and buys, goes to any of these e-commerce websites, and you put your information on those websites, and your information is stored in the EU, I can assure you the owners of those websites, data controllers and the data processors themselves, they are aware of their obligations to you, and they know that they can be heavily fined if there's a breach or they misuse that data. To some level, that should give you some comfort. Also in Nigeria, there are several attempts at protecting your data. And as Sheyi has mentioned, there's a draft data protection bill that is going around. I think one of the important aspects of that bill is the creation of the Data Protection Commission. Now, it will be an independent commission that will focus on the protection of data of Nigerians and Nigerian residents. So once that bill, hopefully, once it goes through, it provides another level of protection for you and I, particularly those of us that just love to click. When you go to those websites and you just want to get your business done as quickly as possible. Just thought I should mention that.
Okay, can I, Mr. Moderator, can I attempt to answer the question put forward to me? Hello? Hello?
You're on
Sorry,
mute.
can you?
You're on mute.
Yes, you can go ahead, sir.
Okay, I can go ahead. Thank you very much. I guess the question was, what is the plan of the cement of blockchain, fintech regulation, and most importantly, CBDC, central bank digital currency implementation? So, I wish to thank the learned Seal when he mentioned the role of NIDA in this whole ecosystem. So, for those of us that are very close to the ongoings there, NIDA has just set up a high-powered committee to study and come up with a clear strategy on distributed ledger technology adoption in Nigeria. So that committee is working very hard, and FSS 2020, where I'm resident now, is part of that committee. So the idea is come up with a clear strategy, because in this conversation, we have been talking about the different misalignment between regulators, policies, regulations. So we are trying to, with the issue of the distributed ledger technology, we want to take a holistic approach to it, come with a clear strategy, a blueprint on how, and again, NIDA is the agency statutorily empowered to come up with that kind of framework. And from the CBN point of view, I'll be looking at the validity of the adoption of distributed ledger technology, not only in the payment system space, but for other things. So it is very important. I don't want the conversation to be restricted to central bank digital currency only when we're talking about distributed ledger technology. But there are quite possible applications. Us as regulators, the use of rich tech, we can use DLT for that. Of course, the smart contracts we're talking about, and some of the initiatives we have around micro, small, medium enterprises in Nigeria. I think that is very important. We need to explore the whole gamut of possibilities, not only restricted to central bank digital currency. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim, for that response. There's another question for the Leonard Silk here from Maduka Onkeme. I would love to hear the reaction of the Leonard Silk in respect of the alleged freezing of the accounts of NSAS processors and the disruption of use of some fintech platforms to receive donations for the protest. I'm not
okay. No, I can hear you. Maduka, right? Mr. Maduka, I guess. One, I apologize. I think the matter is sub judice, right? Because there are issues as regards that court. Anyway, and then I'm usually careful to give opinions. But maybe the other part I can talk about is the fintech platforms for donation. You know, I need to mention also to you that, like we said, and like a number of people have rightly pointed out, there are rules and regulations for engagement, in whatever it is that you do in Nigeria, particularly when it comes to issues of finance or issues of giving money or issues of receiving or donations, as it were. And the law, as of today, as that I know it, the central bank governor has latitude of powers when he feels, and it's an act of National Assembly, it's within his powers. And you know, sometimes when I hear people make comments about how big, sometimes it's usually very sentimental, and I need to be careful now. You know, when people make comments, you know, the act of the National Assembly, except you change it, it is there, and for the fact that it has been legislated, and that's what it is, we have it as a legislation in Nigeria, or have it as an act in Nigeria, there is nothing we can do about it. The other part of it being a sentimental thing, people doing their, well, honest free gifts. But and may I hope you understand this, say this, it's been known around the world that central banks of nations decide to regulate how monies are being spent, even by private individuals. And because if you notice, there was a time that people were saying there were a lot of donations going towards the Niger Delta or the Northeast as regards the issues or problems being prevalent there. And there was some financial deterrent or financial, intervention that the bank had to do in relation to this. I'm not saying that is what it is in relation to now, but government is government, Act of National Assembly is Act of National Assembly. There are so many, and I tell people that there are so many ways to kill it, right? It does not have to be a one particular way that you want to do it. There's so many ways around. Yes, we want to develop our fintech. Yes, we want to have our rights. Yes, there are things we can do. But what the Act of the National Assembly, the power that central, very governor of the central bank. Our own sentiment, my sentiment, your sentiment, can never take it away. And like I mentioned to you, because it's already in court, well, I hope, and I'm really looking forward to some parts of those judgments. Yes, I'm involved in some of the cases anyway that they're doing in relation to all of this, and that's why I'm careful to talk about it. But for me, my own position is powers of central bank governor. Unless that power is touched or tweaked, it's an act of National Assembly, and there's nothing anybody whatsoever can do about it. So that, I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leonard. So there's another question for, okay, this one is directed to any of the panelists. So it's from Onize. What part does technology play in protecting legal and judicial data? For instance, the recent NSAS protest and arson of the Igbo High Court.
So, can I answer the question? Can I attempt to answer the question?
Speaking of you, I thought one of the lawyers will feel.
No, there's a reason why I want to and I just want to draw an attention to a certain thing. I belong to a cohort of companies that have just gotten investment from a Hong Kong-based VC. And one of the things that one of my cohort mates is App for Legal, and basically these guys are churning out tons of money just trying to digitalize legal facilities across across the world. And they started from the Middle East and they are expanding to Asia and coming to Africa. So with the problems that you see, ultimately means there are solutions that can be provided for these problems. And I think that's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on being able to deliver. A lot of people say there are a lot of problems in Nigeria. Yes, it means there's a lot of money to be made. That's the way it interprets problems. And if we have issues like, oh wait, a house was burnt, and because of that, we don't have data, we don't have this, it means that a startup can spring up and fix that situation and make and become a solution for that space. So let's not focus on what the problem is. Let's focus on what the solution that can be created out of that problem to make sure that we now have something that we are proud of as a country. So a startup like, say, digitalize legal documents, or say do certain things, or monetize this, can actually spring up from that incident, and you see that a good thing rather than a bad thing. And that's for me. That's from a tech standpoint. You could actually digitalize a lot of all these things and make it a full-fledged company that can actually be, because the same problems you have in Nigeria, it's probably you're having in Uganda, it's probably you're having in other aspects, other places in Africa, where we still use paper, we still carry paper to court, we still, when you're in court, you have to talk 6 times because the judge is writing, you have to write, and when you say too much, you have to repeat what you're saying. These are all ways that, startups can actually be created out of all these problems and
yeah.
get to that point.
Yeah. So but we just take a bite at the question. So can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So basically, just take a bite at the question, right? The moderator said earlier, that really that world over is a matter of law catching up with technology. So technology always moves ahead, and law tries to catch up, and is essentially a function of, I can even quote, is something that one of the oldest judges, or old judge, right, a retired justice of the Court of Supreme Court, Justice Norgan, as once says that, look, the law needs to catch up, otherwise everybody will move on and the law will be behind. I know to a very large extent that the Lagos State Judiciary has made several attempts in this regard. And like Simon had alluded to, there are many they now call themselves, or they are called legal tech companies, both in America, in Europe, and other parts of the world, where it's a matter of dimensioning that particular legal product and providing service to it. So essentially it's about data automation, document automation, and also archiving and delivery. The present administration of the Lagos State High Court, I know at some point had made allusions to putting in place processes for e-filing, and also for data searches, and also doing digital search on documents being filed. And also, apart from having your normal paper documents, you also have your digital documents filed and stored in the particular database. There's been movement in that regard, though we cannot say for a certainty this is where they are now. But I know in the next coming years, or as soon as we think, or we can even imagine, there might be a solution for this, and this will really be helpful, looking at the last incident of the NSAS protest, where a lot of case files were burnt. And I believe in another couple of years, or in the nearest future, the Lagos State will do some. Lagos State Judiciary should be able to bring out a solution in this regard. Over to you, moderator.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was going to take the final question, and I believe the panelists can see the question. So who is not directed to anyone in particular, and it says, in the sphere of fintech insurance completely non-existent, what is being done in this regard, and which of the government agencies should be held accountable for this? Fintech insurance.
Well, if I may, Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
Yeah, from the perspective of the FSS 2020, the whole financial system in Nigeria is supposed to be an integrated ecosystem, whereby and if I talk about the financial system, we're not only looking at the banking, for example, payments. Insurance is equally important, pension is equally important, a mortgage, micro small medium enterprises. So we're looking at the whole system working together to achieve a common goal. So it is not good only paying attention to fintech in terms of payments, in terms of the banking sector, when the market is ripe, the opportunities are there in insurance, in pensions, and we are not exploring that. So I think that is something the operators need to look at carefully and also understand the interconnectedness of the whole system, whereby all sectors need to work together to achieve the end goal. Thank you very much.
If I may just take a bite at it, just like Mr. Ibrahim had rightly mentioned, many of us, when we talk about fintech, are so fixated on the payment system. But like Mr. Ibrahim had said, it's an ecosystem and there are other parts of it. And I know for certainty there are some insurance technology companies in the market. I know one or two that we've advised in the past. And what I can tell you for sure, what I can tell the question, the person asking the question is that will actually come within the purview of NICOM. So I can't immediately recall the section of the Insurance Act whereby when you're introducing a new insurance product, right? Even though at the time the NICOM regulation was issued, it may not have anticipated digital or technology in terms of providing insurance products. But when you introduce such a new insurance product, you might even you will need to get the necessary approval or consent from the NICOM. And it even goes as far as even a normal, I can tell you a good example, a particular a company that just for confidentiality's sake, they're like a go-to store for mobile phones, and they kind of put out a product for them to actually insure your screen and everything. And they got a note from NICOM saying, look, this is a new insurance product, and as such, you need to be regulated. And if NICOM has that disposition towards a normal brick and mortar product, just trying to insure the screen of my phone, I guess they'll be much more interested in actually putting some sort of regulation or oversight over insurance technology. Hope that answers the question.
Just to also add, please, just to also add that, so this is also something that is happening with the telcos too, and I'm talking about the value-added service providers. They are already offering insurance products. And for people who have been using their phones for a while, I'm sure you must have received some texts, offering you those products. So as value-added services also, it's also being offered via the telcos and the mobile service providers also.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all the panelists. I think we've done justice to the topic, and we don't have any more questions, and we do have another panel session which we'll have to take shortly. But I want to use this opportunity to say thank you to everyone who has joined in, from the Learned Silk to the representative from the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Rotimi Akapo Sheye Ayinla Simeon. Thank you. I know you're very busy. Angel, it appears he has tripped up, but supposed to join us back. So I just want to say a very big thank you to every member of the panel for the robust discussion and insights that you have presented this afternoon. Thank you very much. We'll be moving next to a poll. I'll be launching a poll for our participants to answer, not for the panelists, but we'll have another panel session immediately after this. Thank you very much, everybody. You have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So from the polling results, 53%, 53% say social media should not be regulated. 36% say that social media should be regulated a bit, and then just 11% say social media should be regulated. In the near future, will technology displace lawyers? Everybody says no, 94% says no, and then 6% say yes. Interesting. And the next session we'll be having will deal with some of the issues with respect to technology and law. Okay, the final question on the poll was, will digital currency replace fiat money? Apparently, 31% says yes, 36% say no, and 33% are unsure. Interesting results, I would say. Okay, we'll quickly move on to the next panel discussion. And my colleague, Omoumi Omidiji, will be hosting that panel discussion.
Hi, everybody. So we've come to the second part of this summit, and this session is concentrated on the topic leveraging digital transformation for a successful career. With me, I have a number of panelists, and I will be calling them shortly. I have Ikechukwu. I have Sean. Hi, Sean. Hi, Ikechukwu. I have David. I have Nancy. I have Scott. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So I'm just going to briefly read your profiles so that everyone is familiar with you. I mean, for those that don't know you, they will know your background and we'll take it up from there. So I'll start with Nancy. Nancy is a legal counsel and company secretary of PayCom Nigeria Limited, OPay. Previously, she was the head of the legal unit of Planet Capital Limited, advising local, foreign, and foreign corporations on the legal and financial implications of doing business in Nigeria. She has extensive experience with several clients on different modes of financing in the capital market space. She is a graduate of Madonna University of Kija, and she's a member of various organizations, including the Chartered Institute of Secretaries and Administrators UK and the Nigerian Bar Association. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Umi. Thank you, everyone.
Also, we have Scott. Scott is a co-founder and CEO of Africa Legal, part of the Africa Professional Services Group. Africa Legal was founded with the goal of helping African legal professionals access the latest jobs and legal news in one place. They have invested, also heavily invested in providing a market dealing legal education, offering on websites that will allow law students and practicing legal professionals to upskill through online courses that offer accreditation and partnerships with leading universities across Africa. Welcome, Scott.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
So we also have Ikechukwu Wana. Ikechukwu has almost 20 years in commercial law practice and is a partner with the Dhaka attendees. I hope I got that right, Ikechukwu. Before co-founding the firm, he had garnered extensive dispute resolution and transactional experience working in other law firms. Ikechukwu is a graduate of Abia State University and has a master's degree in law from Obafemi Awolowo University. Currently, he is the secretary of the Law Firm Management Committee on the section of Business Law of the Nigerian Bar Association. Ikechukwu is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Taxation Nigeria and a member of Commonwealth Lawyers Association, International Bar Association, Nigerian Institute of Association of Nigeria, and Association of Outsourcing Practitioners of Nigeria. Welcome, Ikechukwu. I think you're on
Thank you
mute.
for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming or for being here. We also have Davidson. Davidson is Davidson Oturu. Davidson is a partner at ALEX, a full service firm offices in Nigeria and Ghana. He heads the firm's technology, media, telecommunications, and intellectual property practice groups. His clients have a variety of industries, including banking, information technology, private equity, financial services, payments, pharmaceuticals, and capital markets. He provides practical and strategic advice regarding the Nigerian data protection. He assists clients with remediating high-stakes, multi-jurisdictional cybersecurity breaches, negotiating complex technology transactions, franchising, and intellectual property licensing. He's a member of the Security and Exchange Commission. He's also a member of the International Technology Law Association, the Fintech Association of Nigeria, the Chartered Institute of Trademark Attorneys, okay, the International Intellectual Property and Technology Law Committee of the International Bar Association, and the Intellectual Property Law Group of the American Bar Association. He has also authored the Nigerian chapter for the 2020 MODAC Fintech Cooperative Guide and recently contributed to the Nigerian section to data guidance and data protection in the Nigerian financial sector. He has written several articles and is regularly invited to speak at industry academic conferences such as this, and we're happy to have you, David.
Thank you, Omi. Pleasure. Pleasure is mine.
Can everybody see me now? Apologies, I got myself. Can you all see me and hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Great.
Yes.
So we also have Seun Timi Oleolu. She is the managing partner of Paystones, a modern full-service solution-driven and commercially savvy law practice with a particular interest in technology and innovation. She has substantial experience in protecting the interests of businesses in various industries and driving the successful completion of major regional and cross-border technology transactions, including the first major information technology outsourcing in Africa. As a result of her passion for technological disruptions that solve key problems such as access to finance, she works with a team of lawyers to support fintechs and other startups in understanding their regulatory terrain and in pushing past barriers of the success of their operations. Which she utilizes to positively impact the growth of her clients' businesses. Welcome, Seun.
Thank you, Wumi. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. Oh, thank you for being here. We're just going to go straight into it so that keep the time and we don't keep everyone waiting. I will start with you, Seun. Looking at the theme of this session, the theme is leveraging digital transformation for a successful career. Are there ways you could say that you have leveraged digital transformation in Nigeria, applying it to your work or your practice in Nigeria as of today?
So to better understand your question, you're asking if I have leveraged technology in delivery of legal services. Yes, definitely. So Pavestones is very keen on utilizing technology to reach an untapped global market. We don't see ourselves as local players. We are literally global in our mindset. Now, I'll give you a very obvious example. As of now, COVID has made it hard for people to network, but with Pavestones, we keep disseminating information through various mediums, through various platforms, that notwithstanding this period of being locked down or having to stay away from people, we've been able to draw in clients from different countries sitting in our office. And because of the various platforms we use, to disseminate information. It's been amazing. We get requests from China, Australia, different countries. We've also used technology to understand our clients.
I beg, hold on. Let me, I'll send you a number, call the person. I'm on a Zoom call.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. I think that was a bit of an interruption. So we've also used technology to better understand our clients. Like even with the newsletters, we get prompts sometimes telling us who is reading what, who is paying attention to what. So we can use that to market our services. Although lawyers don't market, but we can literally reach out to these people knowing what they're interested in. And that, I would say, is one of the many ways we have used technology.
Fantastic. I would like to direct the same question to Scott, knowing that you have an organization that helps with helping lawyers get jobs, continuous education, and amongst other things. How would you say you have capitalized on the digital transformation we have now, or would I say technology as well?
Okay, firstly, it's lovely to be here today, and hi to everyone, so familiar faces on the panel today. Look, I think that I agree with what Sharon's just said. I think Africa Legal has been built for the reason of actually being able to put the African legal profession on a bigger platform, on a more global assisted platform. And it's interesting what Sharon was saying, because that's exactly what we're finding now. You know, Africa Legal's been about for 6 years now, and it's been a long journey for all of us. And I have to say, one of our strongest markets is Nigeria, especially the younger lawyers in Nigeria, who contact us regularly every week for information. So I think using technology this year has given us all a bit more confidence in technology, whereas before we didn't have it. And it's just shown us how small the world has become by using technology, and how accessible our legal services can be to other parts of the globe. And I firmly believe that Africa Legal has positioned itself to enable to help brands like the law firms in Nigeria, etc., really put themselves onto a global playing field. So using technology to access more clients globally has always been our focus here at Africa Legal, as well as just the jobs and the learning that goes along with it. It's promotion of brands without being promotion of brands.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next question is for Nancy, and I think this is very important, knowing how far we've come in the last 5 or 10 years and how a lot has changed. I mean, 10 years ago, you literally would walk into a bank trying to queue to get some transaction done, or you'd have to go through the hustle of you basically couldn't do a lot of things over your phone. Now we have, I can't remember the last time I went into a bank. I can't remember the last time I had issues I literally would do everything, almost everything on my phone. Now, would you say from your experience, Nancy, that from your experience working with a tech company, that we're in an environment that enables and encourages innovation in Nigeria? The Nigerian environment, basically.
Thank you, Umi, and hi once more to everyone on this event. Quite interesting, an interesting question, actually. Laws and regulation, though critical, should not stifle innovation, which is some of the things we've seen come from 10 years ago to what we have now. We have, however, seen that certain bodies have overlapping responsibilities, which negatively affect the clarity of the intent of certain laws and regulations. The establishment of sector-specific laws, regulations, and policies should enable the creation of an enabling environment for the sustainable development of the technological sector. These include legal requirements such as guidelines, directives, and standards established by the relevant regulatory authorities. In order to develop these laws, however, there should be wide stakeholder engagement. Experts from different fields should be brought in, including parties that would provide constructive criticisms to the proposed law. This assumes that there will be wider coverage and applicability of the regulated environment. So a case point for this question would be the recently announced Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, which aims to give a higher level of control to data subjects with regards to how their information is being used, processed, stored, and distributed. Now, businesses that deal with personal data in Nigeria have to comply with these laws. And this is just an example of, some of the things we're experiencing now, at the risk of penalties as indicated by this regulation. Now, the NDPR is a welcome regulation, being that it now encourages organizations to become more aware of data management and the attendant implementation of security policies to safeguard sensitive data. Now, an issue we have is the enforcement of the NDPR is another area that needs to be reviewed for applicability. And as the regulatory environment changes, there should be structures in place to review and change obsolete laws and regulations we have here in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I totally get what you mean, and I believe there's a lot that has to be done, if you ask me, because I think if there's anything, the pandemic has forced us into, I wouldn't want to call it a virtual economy, but it hit us so hard, we didn't see it coming. And we found out that it was a lot of the things that had been created. AKA, look at we are on Zoom right now. On a normal day, we'll be in a conference room having this conversation. And this question goes to Davidson. I'd like to find out, with the level of innovation we have now, looking at, for example, we had the stocks of Zoom go up. We had the stocks of Netflix. All these companies were before the pandemic. They literally skyrocketed with the pandemic. So it shows how technology in any situation, if you ask me, will still remain. That's what I believe in. Now, looking at our practice in Nigeria, knowing even in the way people have practiced law in the traditional way, most, if we're being realistic, a lot of lawyers are still doing, even in the mode of business, carrying out business is still in the traditional way. Davidson, how were you able to adjust? How was your firm able to adjust with the pandemic that started? How were you able to adjust and get on your feet? I would like to think you didn't fall off, but get on your feet to continue on that level of, before the pandemic. What were the things, the techniques, or the things you put into action to make sure it didn't affect business as usual?
Right. Well, thank you, Wumi. I think people have more or less touched on various aspects of it. Scott sort of touched on it, and as well as Sean. I think what we've had to do really has been to stay agile with the times. So for a firm like ours, it wasn't like it required us to step out of our comfort zone, in the sense that for a good number of lawyers, I'm sure, like even on this panel too, we've been using most of these tools. Zoom has been around for a while. Skype was sort of reigning. Microsoft Teams saw an upsurge during this period. Of course, their book even latched onto it too, and that also grew. So I think what basically happened for us in order to adjust was we knew how we basically marketed, we knew how we developed our business, which was maybe going from one conference or the other, or traveling to meet with different clients in different locations. So definitely we couldn't do this any longer. And so it required adaptation. And these tools basically came to the rescue. So we knew we couldn't travel to meet with potential clients and all of that. So we set up Zoom meetings. We could even go as far as having coffee, like lunch time meetings where we would have a mug of coffee, like Scott close by, and then just be sipping and then be having our conversations like we would normally have, and what it actually did for us was that it made it easier to have a lot of meetings. In a day, you could probably end up having like 5-6 meetings, right? Now, if you even traveled, you couldn't have those many meetings, but sitting at your home, and I'm sure a good number of us saw the memes where guys will be sitting down with shirts, but they will have a blazer on, so you could do that all day long and nobody would be the wiser regarding what you look like. And then, so that sort of helped. Working remotely as well meant that most of our folks had to have laptops and work remotely. We needed to make sure that our systems were updated. We have what we call Time Doctor, which is a tool. Again, you could call it a legal tech tool, which helped us to bill and know when the lawyers are working and bill the clients accordingly. Of course, we were using OneDrive already, which helped us to store our documents such that regardless of where you were, you could store your documents and work remotely. So I would say with the use of those tools, legal tech tools, and as well as your regular technology and products, we were able to not just stay afloat, but actually thrive, because for some of our practice areas, there was actually some growth, in terms of being able to do quite a bit. Again, you also have legal tech tools like Law Pavilion and the NWLR that is also online now. So you could do your research. You could basically do most of the things that you would be required to go into the office to do, which also made us to start thinking that, well, maybe some things can actually work that we thought were impossible before. So necessity sort of makes you to latch onto that. So I think technology was the savior during this period, and it will do much more in the coming days and years.
Thank you very much. Still on this, on how technology can be of help. My question is for Ikechukwu. Again, we know how conservative our judicial system is, or the judiciary. And, with everything that happened, we had virtual hearings and all of that. What areas do you really think the judiciary can actually go digital and actually leverage on technology heavily? Because, for example, I can remember there was a time I was doing due diligence on a particular company, and we're trying to see some of the cases they had in court. And my boss at the time, schooled in the UK, grew up in the UK, and he was like, why don't you just check online? And I was like, oh no, it doesn't work that way because we don't have everything online. But it's sad because this was just last year, and it was something that literally shouldn't be an issue. It's something that we should actually have in place. So what aspects do you think would be great for us to leverage technology in the judicial system or judiciary?
Thank you, Wumi, and thank you, the participants and organizers of this program, for having me. I want to say that our judiciary is at a state where we need to act very fast and decisively. Like we all know, the very usual, the dictum of Lord Denham in Packer and Packer: if we never do anything that's not been done before, we'll not get anywhere. The law will stand still, and the rest of the world will go on, and it will be bad for everybody. And that's where we are right now. It's obvious that lawyers, the judiciary is pursuing the law, is pursuing technologies, playing catch up with the technological development, and it should not be so. Back to a lot of issues we have in the judiciary today will be changed if we can employ the right technological tools to rejig the situation that we have in the judiciary. I have a friend today, and this just happened a while ago, who flew in from Abuja to come and do a matter at the Federal High Court in Lagos. And there was no space for them to sit in the particular court in Lagos today. At about 1:30, 2 o'clock, they were told to come and take dates because just only one matter could be, the court could only take one matter. So it's sad that at this point, the court will still have to write in longhand when there are, technological tools that the court could use to ensure that it records every proceedings without writing in longhand. That definitely delays proceedings in court. Again, we have paid a lot of lip service to virtual hearings. I'm sure my friend who had the situation today, having to fly all the way from Abuja to meet a court that would not sit, would have saved time, resources, and even the risk, avoided the risk of coming all the way from Abuja if it was a virtual hearing. And there's been a lot of issues around virtual hearing, but we all know that in a recent court decision, the Supreme Court held that virtual court hearings are legal. So I think that we're at the point where, it's not about the legal framework, but it's actually about the judiciary adopting these tools. We spend in Lagos, for instance, today, the Third Mainland Bridge has been closed. And I imagine what lawyers
I think he has been caught off, maybe network issues.
Could be passing through, trying to get to. Recently went to the Lagos State High Court judiciary website and realized that cost list is now being posted on the website. I think we could do more to post more courts in Nigeria can also learn from that. But clearly, there are issues, the issue of cost list and hearing, and at what time is it fixed for hearing? And all list that on the website. So we can a lot of that. On the Lagos State website, as a judiciary website, you will also find that there is a portion, a web page for filing online. We're not yet activating that. We're not doing that yet. So I think we should, there should be a seamless process to filing matters online. That can help a lot. A recent incident, during the NSAS protests, the courts were burnt down, case files and all of that lost. That could have been saved. There was a digital storage system and archiving system in place, but I'm not aware that we have any of that in place today. So those are some of the things we can readily speak to that can help drive justice delivery and ensure that the judiciary system is more seamless and good.
Thank you very much. On the matter of technology, because again, this is the theme for this session is leveraging digital transformation in a successful career. But would you say, and this question is for Scott and Nancy, looking at the job market and the lawyers we have now, because if you ask me, some people haven't had the opportunity to be equipped with the training. A lot of things that we're talking about, even when you're talking about technology, is soft skills you learn, not necessarily what you learn in law school. So things like you have companies, and I was opportune to have a training in Microsoft 0365 where you could do all kinds of things. And it was before the pandemic, and the pandemic hit. It was like work continued, like it never stopped. But the truth is, not everybody has that opportunity. Now, looking at the labor market, the legal labor market, would you say the lawyers we have now are equipped for the future of work, in the sense that aside from knowing the laws and all of that, also putting ourselves out there and actually having the right tools to make your work, what's it called, more conducive and more efficient. For example, I want to share a document. I don't need to go through the long process. You have your SharePoint, you have different things. So would you say the lawyers we have now are equipped for the future of work? This goes to Scott and Nancy.
Nancy, do you want to go first?
Okay, thanks, Scott. So if you take a look at the world currently, you'll notice that the 5 most valuable companies we have in the world today are technology companies. And that means technology is driving significant business growth and revenue. Now, the question really is, how does the lawyer take advantage of these opportunities? I would assume this is the better way to put that question. Lawyers need to be equipped at the minimum with basic IT skills that will allow them to navigate and also function effectively in a technology-driven world. Lawyers also need to go a step forward or further on building those basic skills and equip themselves with digital technology skills that leverage on a no-code or a very low-code engagement. Now, for example, how do you sort case files without clutter and engage with stakeholders at the same time? There are simple applications that can be developed from spreadsheets without writing any code. So it wouldn't be that difficult for lawyers, right? Even the lawyer can actually leverage on the no-code platforms from tech companies. Like Wumi had mentioned her trainings from Microsoft, and in less than 10 minutes, you can build a functional repository for file cases. And in addition to that, I would also mention that there are many multinational technology companies that are leading this charge to digital and essentially helping to build citizen technology skill sets from the expertise they've garnered in different countries. Case in point is that some of these multinationals have academies or cohort curriculum which have been developed with university lecturers and also educationists. These programs extend to Nigerian and platforms which can help lawyers also build their skills in technology. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. I'd like to go back slightly with the question and think actually, I think there's a high importance for everyone to really start taking ownership of technology and how we use that in our day-to-day lives. I've seen so many young Nigerian lawyers who are so innovative and incredibly bright, not being able to get training contracts or getting positions somewhere. And I think it's also down to the Nigerian Bar Association, I'll say that, to actually upskill the lawyers in technology. I think 2020 has only proven that actually the need and the reliance on technology is greater now than it's ever been. And as Davidson said, moved substantially forward in this pandemic. I agree with what you're saying, Nancy, in terms of the academies and making people fit for purpose for the modern, what we'd say is the modern African lawyer. I think with the Continental Free Trade Agreement coming into place at some point, there's going to be an even more reliance on technology as we move outside of our boundaries. As Sean was saying, with becoming more global. But basic skills are needed. You know, you touched on the point of legal writing. You touched on the point of PowerPoint. I'm seeing more and more young lawyers leaving some of the larger law firms and setting up on their own. Where have they had the experience to set up? What do they know about practice management? What do they know about service? What do we know about branding oneself, let alone going out into the market and trying to find clients? So I think there's a whole lot of soft skills are needed within the market, and a lot of practical steps need to be taken with that. You know, we're going to be doing some more courses next year that come out with the University of Cape Town, and it's practical takeaways. It's not academic, it's practical takeaways. And it's about, what can I learn this morning that I can apply to my client's deal in the afternoon? So what are the 3 takeaways that was needed? And I think if we all collectively work towards becoming more proactive and collaborative throughout 21 and beyond, I think the world and the continent is going to be a better place, because I have never seen so many passionate professionals across the continent than have been recently, have been reaching out to us. And if we can increase that skill level and give everyone the best opportunity to be the best version of themselves, then let's use technology. There are many things need to be changed. We need to look at the bandwidth. We need to look at the technology. So technology is going to let us down in terms of, you know, data, spend on data. So there's a big open conference to be had on that. But I firmly believe in giving everyone the best chance they can ever have, and using technology to do that through education and consumption of content is probably the best way forward, in my eye.
Thank you so much. I'm going to add a little to what you just said. You mentioned that it's also about taking responsibility, and I mean, the Nigerian Bar Association has their own responsibility, or have their own responsibility. I would also think, or I believe, the Council of Legal Education as well, because looking at the curriculum we have in law school, a lot of soft skills are not included. A lot of things that should help you when you come out. It's not enough to know the law. Yes, it's great, but the truth is you have a million lawyers out there looking for a job just as good as you, if not better. Uh, and that's not just the same way you have a first class person and you also have a 2-1 person or a 2-2 person, and one person is more rounded, because in reality, in the business world, you need a rounded person. So when it comes to these academic part of things, you can actually read, and as you practice, you know more on these things, because that's what makes you an expert, because you keep working in these areas. So I believe a very good foundation will be the academics. Looking at the university, I know in universities you have your computer classes, but it's mostly at the entry level of the first year. But I also believe the Council of Legal Education should do a lot more when it comes to the curriculum, because we are taught how to be lawyers, but we are not taught the business of law. We are not taught how to do a lot of things. Not many lawyers can work on PowerPoints, and so many other things. But we're fortunate to have a lot of law firms that have invested heavily in these trainings. But also the reality is the ratio of the big law firms, or the opportunity, the law firms that have that capital, to the ones that don't, the gap is it's
Yeah.
wide. It's really wide. So I believe that the Council of Legal Education, primarily for me, they have a lot to do with the curriculum, and also just make it better, really, so that I can touch on other areas aside from the part that makes us equipped as lawyers. But
Well,
moving forward,
Could I just answer? Could I just add something to that, if that's okay?
yeah,
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying there, but I can say it's not localized. This is not localized problem. It's not just localized to Nigeria. As you know, ours is a Pan-African platform throughout Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, Uganda. It's the same problem that everyone's having. And the lawyer of today, it's not. The lawyer of today has to become very much a service industry. You're only as good as the last deal you're doing. So, and you have to be able to adapt and be, as you said, completely 360-degree lawyer. No one says at law school that you're going to be a lawyer, that you have to go out there and win clients. So I really believe that there's a place for us all to be able to adapt and really make a difference as we go forward, and actually start on that journey. And if we can do little bits at a time, then let's see that things are going to be better as we go forward. Sorry, I'm quite passionate about that one.
absolutely, I totally agree. Moving forward to big data. Now, this is a major part of, I mean, our reality now in this day and age. What areas, and this question is for Davidson, what areas in data protection, cybersecurity would you specifically say haven't been harnessed, haven't been, um, we've not really taken advantage of it, or that needs more lawyers in the areas in Nigeria, basically under big data? I hope I got that question across to you.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's quite clear. So, yeah, big big data is big. Big data is basically what most of the platforms that you mentioned earlier on that have made a killing during this period thrive on. Netflix, they use big data to know your preferences, right? You know, so with big data, they're able to track what kind of series does Wumi like to watch, and then they will be throwing different things your way so that you keep subscribing on different ones. They'll also use big data to know what movies to even produce, right? Because if a particular type of movie like Orange is the New Blue is doing so well, maybe they may decide to do black is the new white or something like that, you know, because orange is the new black had gained so much traction, and they use big data to sort that out. I mean, think of most of the companies, the tech companies now that are thriving, is big data that they're operating on Facebook and all of that. And with that also comes opportunities for the lawyers too. There is a sort of awakening globally and even in Nigeria. Issues around data protection are at the forefront now. The Nigeria Data Protection Regulation and the General Data Protection Regulation of the UK have sort of made the issue of data to be on the front burner. But one thing that we realize is that there are no uniform laws on data protection and cybersecurity. So it's not like, even though there are general principles, you know, that would apply globally, but what may apply in the United States or in Russia, for instance, you may not be able to implement it directly in Nigeria. So the opportunities that arise there for you as a lawyer is, if that's a space that you want to operate in, then you need to understand our own data protection laws, you know, and how the issues around liabilities and protection can show up. Because the truth of the matter is this: it's only the lawyers that can really answer those questions. There's nobody else that can do that. So you have to develop capacity around that. Fortunately, now there's a lot going on in terms of trainings, both the free and the paid ones. So you can gain so much knowledge around data privacy, data protection, and all of that. Issues around transfer of data, sale of data, you know, people go online, scrape data. Even during this period, again, it's been another time when a lot of clients have asked questions. Even issues around distribution agreements, there's also the issue of data. So they need to know things around licensing. Data shows up again. So having that broad knowledge around data protection, data privacy would also give you some sort of advantage. Now, cybersecurity, well, you need to think of a lot of things. I mean, there's the Internet of Things, 5G, 4G making the rounds, and all of that. That also creates another opportunity for lawyers to understand the framework around cybersecurity. You know, issues that go on with regards to online platforms. What happens where there's a hack, you know, and it's also possible for lawyers to develop capacity around these disciplines. So, which is what makes you a valuable lawyer, right? You know, it makes you have the ability to be in the room with the tech guys or the companies that are looking for solutions and be able to help them. So I'll give you this, because this is what I did for myself. I started learning so much. You know, I took courses, took trainings, took a lot of things, and I wasn't taking them as a lawyer. So I was starting from ground zero, you know, out about blockchain, finding out about data protection, just generally trying to understand it, not from the position of a lawyer now, but from the position of somebody who just wants to be able to understand it so that I can have the right type of discussions with people. And combining that knowledge with the one that I have as a lawyer has become very valuable to me. So think of being able to sit down with different government officials and have coherent discussions around cybersecurity and why there's a need for there to be an update, an upgrade on a few things, and then how to do it. During the NSAS protest, we saw there were these guys who were supposedly hacking CBN websites. You know, they hacked quite a number of places. In fact, rumor had it that they hacked DSTV and they were subscription. You know, they hacked Access Bank, I think. You know, so all of these things are out there, right there. Lawyers would be the ones, the lawyers with the right kind of skill sets would be the ones that would thrive during that, the evolution that we already have around us. So the opportunities are there. We just need to get them, go for them, and develop our capacity, so to speak.
Thank you very much. While you were talking, a lot just came to my mind, and I'm directing this question to Shion specifically. With everything you have said, David, Shion, do you think that the regulations we have now regarding tech, I mean, for example, there are lots of digital banks coming up, and CBN came with their revised license requirements, you know, the requirements for you to get either your unit license as a microfinance bank or as a national microfinance bank or as a state. So a lot of the minimum share capital required had increased. The gap was so much. Would you say that, first of all, the questions are in two phases? Would you say that first the regulations we have are up to their par with the technology we're getting, in the sense that, okay, you have a lot happening right now. Are we saying that, oh, as the technology keeps evolving, our laws are evolving just as much and catching up? Two, the method at which they are churning out these regulations, are they regulations that are helping these companies, startups, innovations, or they are creating bottlenecks, or they're stifling the growth of these ideas, innovations, and companies? Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Wumi. I'm sure you saw me smile when you were asking, because it's almost like a rhetorical question. At this point, our regulations are definitely not being developed at the speed at which startups are innovating. We are seeing an effort, though. Even the new BOFIA that just came out, which is the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, there are provisions dealing with virtual banks now, digital services provided via on platforms. So the government and regulators are definitely trying to regulate the space. Fintech is definitely a space that they have an eye on, and there's a lot going on there, from payment service bans to mobile money licensing, regulations to international transfer. There are even possible regulations for cryptocurrency now. But are they suited for what's happening? No, not necessarily. I know the CBN has tried to develop a sandbox, which is what a lot of countries have done, so they can better understand what technology companies are trying to do, then regulate it properly. So there is some work in place to have a sandbox whereby they look at what innovators are developing, they watch it, and then they regulate it. So during the period while you're in that sandbox, you're not regulated. That's how it's supposed to be. So our regulators are trying to better understand what the innovators are doing and regulate properly. But we do know the issues in Nigeria, and it's one thing to have an intention to properly regulate, but there are bottlenecks already in our system that need to be dealt with, which I would rather not say too much of, because obviously we might have an international market here. But we do have some issues even within the regulators that make it hard for good regulations to actually be given proper effect to. So there are issues there. But one regulation that is actually one area that is being regulated, and if you compare what is being done to what is being done abroad, it's actually not too bad, is when it comes to data protection. So we have the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, which is almost similar to the GDPR, and it's even creating opportunities for lawyers, and data required to be audited regularly, at least every year. If you have over 1,000 in the first 6 months, if you're handling personal data of over 1,000 data subjects. So that's one area that our regulators are trying to at least protect the interest of data subjects. Although some startups might see it as stifling them, there is a need to protect data subjects in Nigeria, because data in the wrong hands can be used for the wrong things, can be used for fraud, can be used to harm people. So that's one area that they are coming up in. And it's also an opportunity for our lawyers because companies are now required to have data protection officers in-house. They're required to be audited by data protection compliance organizations. And lawyers can take this opportunity. They can be data protection officers in multinational companies or local companies, and they can law firms who are licensed, like Pavestones, we are licensed to do that. You can be a data protection compliance organization and audit businesses to ensure that they are handling data properly. So we'll give it to our regulators there. In the fintech space, there's an effort, but let's hope it develops a bit faster. Thank you, Wumi.
Thank you so much. We will soon get to the end of this session. I'd like to tell everyone to please get their questions ready and start posting. Back to you again. I'd like to find out this question for you again, Sean and Scott.
Okay.
Yes. Looking at you, Scott and Davidson, actually, looking at social media as a tool, and also looking at our rules of professional conduct against advertising and all of that, what ways can we take advantage of social media as a tool in enhancing a successful career or business in law?
So who's going first? Did I go first?
Yes, please do.
Sean, are you going first? Is Sean there or should
I'm there.
Sean
I'm there.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Or I think network.
So the rules of professional conduct on not advertising, I would say it's a cake. It's not to continue to comply with what we have on ground. In terms of social media, the general public can be enlightened on. You can try and create awareness on. And when you do that, you are sharing, you are sensitizing the public to knowledge. You're creating awareness. You're creating visibility for your practice, and you're also creating awareness to at least your areas of interest and your areas of focus as a law practice. So sharing information freely is one way by which law practices and law practices and lawyers can gain some visibility without necessarily breaching the rules of professional conduct. I know I see law firms also put out updates on transactions they've worked on when it's closed. That's another way social media is used to create awareness. Yes, and there are also various platforms like Scott's platform where when you're a part of it, there are opportunities to network. And it's another way by which at least you gain some visibility on online visibility. So Scott, I'll let you take it from there.
Sure, lovely. Thank you for that. I think I didn't get some of the comments you were making, but I think I'm going to echo, guessing, that what you had said was very much about, in keeping with the laws of business development within the country. What we're finding is law firms, and Davidson's a good friend of ours as well with Alex, are looking at positioning certain lawyers in certain jurisdictions as specialists within their field. So in that way, seen as thought leadership. So what we're finding now is a lot of the law firms are not necessarily content driven, and it will be research driven. So we've got many things that are coming to the market in January we'd like to add, which are very exciting, and in keeping with this panel discussion today. But I think that looking at research, looking at positioning oneself as either a digital best lawyer or an IP lawyer, and this is what law firms are starting to do across the continent, not just the African law firms, but also some of the international firms as well. And I think that's a way in which the community becomes more collaboration throughout 21 is a way forward for a lot of people. We're in this together. It's been a tough year for everyone. And I think by collaborating, more visibility and giving people to actually say, well, actually, I know who's might be in India, but I don't know. So bring to the foray and putting it on a global platform is going to be beneficial to everyone's brand. I think that's kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, I think we said similar things.
Davidson?
Okay, well, thank you, Wumi. I guess Scott and Sean have said quite a number of things, and time is against that. But what I would say is this: if you look at the rules of professional ethics, yes, it requires a lot to be done on it. But I guess knowing our propensity for taking things overboard, I mean, I don't know how many of you have seen those adverts in the US, but they are crazy, man. Just a lot of things go down. But if you look closely at the RPC, that is the Rules of Professional Conduct, it actually says that a lawyer is fair and proper in all circumstances, and it complies with the provisions of the rules. It then goes on to say that, publish maybe like in a respectable law journal or directory, that is acceptable. So maybe like the Who Legal Chambers, so all of those things are acceptable. So as a lawyer, you need to be able to market yourself around the permissible activities while not going out and advertising. So if you put out and say, I'm the best lawyer of the world, then that's way off. But if you are putting out factual statements, I have been ranked by Who Legal as, I mean, that's a statement of fact. So regardless of whether I put it out on it is what it is, write an article that is informative and will help you to understand the practice of law. That is acceptable as well. And I give you my address, because the rules also says you can, probably even give you a teaser around things, data protection. This is what it says, la, 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 la. If you want to find out more, contact a law firm, that could be willing to assist you. And then I sign off on my name. So you would ask yourself, who would I want to contact now? Would it be somebody who I can clearly see has given me advice, or do I want to start browsing to look for somebody else? So naturally, you will reach out to those people. I think lawyers need to see themselves as brands, see what you're doing as a business. And I tell even lawyers within it gets to the point in your career where you move from being a grinder, you're just carrying law reports and all of that. And then you now start trying to create an identity for what you do, because that is what is going to sell you eventually. We live in an era where they are specialists, so those great general practitioners now, let me find out that may be very popular, that had to do with infringement of his IP rights. That's not fundamental rights now, so it's going to be difficult for him, or something that has to do with tax or royalties in the oil and gas sector. You wouldn't go to him now because he may just want to do it the way that every other thing is done. So find your niche, carve yourself, use the permissible tools to create that identity around who you are and what you do. So the tools are there really. Just utilize them the right way without being, trying to sell something that is not,
Okay, just sending what you said. I mean, this question is for Ikechukwu and anybody else that's interested in answering this. What are your thoughts on the social media bill? And do you think it's a progressive one or otherwise?
Okay, I think it's repressive. Our constitution guarantees right to speech, right to freedom of expression, and the constitution is the ground norm for this country. The social media bill, I've not looked at it, but my impression of it is that it runs against the provisions of that our extant constitution. And more importantly, the time when it's been advocated for also raises a lot of suspicion. This is a time when the citizens, especially the young citizens of Nigeria, believe that the government has been very irresponsible, has not been very responsive to issues that are going on in the country. Also, there's a general discontent with the way the country has been run so far. And to start talking about, silencing those voices seems to run against the grain of what the Constitution talks about. And I'm run against as well having society. Interestingly, if you look at him about that provision of the Constitution of speech and expression, it's all about trying to engage the government to ensure that you build a better government, build a better environment, be able to deliver on the promises that the government have made to the masses. So trying to now circumvent or circumscribe that provision of the Constitution, it's not, I don't think it's, I think I would subscribe to that. On the other hand, there's no case in that the social media has been subjected to a lot of abuse, and some people are using it to, push a lot of misinformation. But those are issues that can be dealt with. And I think, for instance, the Cybercrime Law Act has dealt with a lot of that issues that relate to, misusing the social media. I also think that issues, slander, and so on and so forth, can take care of a lot of the issues that the government is complaining about. So I think that instead of passing the social media bill, the government should be more responsive to the issues that the citizens have, and also see how they can use the tools that are already in place to deal with they think is an abuse of the social media. That's my thought on it.
Thank you. Scott and Sean, do you guys have anything to add to that?
No, I think he said it all for me.
I'm not enough to comment on the local law. So yeah, it sounds like there's possibly, hopefully, progression there somewhere along the line.
Davidson, I see you smiling.
Few things that happen. So I think rather than going all out to try and regulate the social media bill, it's to actually let people be responsible in what we do, because we live in a fragile society where just sharing some offensive things can tilt something over. It's not social media that is causing it. It's so the problem might be, and not try and hamper what is clearly better for more people than than the less.
Thank you so much. So before we move to our questions, I was going to add to what you said about taking responsibility, and I think what social media has done. I mean, looking at specifically the period of EndSARS, we're in a situation or we're in a country where a lot of times the narrative of what you see is based on what has been pushed out, not necessarily the fact. And what social media has done is situations where, for example, the SARS situation, the reason it even started in the first place was because someone posted what was going on with SARS, you know, trying to manhandle somebody else and all of that. And I think that, like you said, it's not really the best approach because the issues are the issues. We have governing laws that would actually address those issues. But this definitely is sending a narrative where the government is trying to use an iron hand, knowing that, yes, we can do what we can. We'll just look at China, look at this. But the truth is, we should look at the pros. There's so much good that has happened with social media, even businesses on social media. And if you're saying this, if you're saying people saying their mind is an issue, then there's a problem. Then that means we're only given an idea of democracy. We actually are not in a democratic government. So I think basically everything you said has covered it basically. We shall move on to the questions, and a lot of them have been directed to Ikechukwu. I hope you're ready, Ikechukwu. First one is from Maduka. He says, I was involved in defending hashtag NSAS protesters arrested by police, and it was difficult identifying arrested suspects. We had to search manually and move from one security agency office to another to identify arrested suspects. Please, Ikechukwu and other lawyers, how can we overhaul our current analog data storage and transmission system in our criminal justice system specifically? And if possible, integrate data sharing and harmonization between the security agencies, the Ministry of Justice, the courts, and prisons.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Maduka, for the question. I hope my colleagues would also chip in. But let me just even say something about it. I agree with Maduka that this is a major problem with our justice administration system. There's a lot of disconnect. Everybody's working in silos. The Ministry of Justice, for instance, would not be able to tell you today how many persons are waiting trial in the prisons. I'm also sure that the courts are not likely to tell us with exact figure of the number into the NSAS protests or how many of them have been convicted or what the stage of their prosecution is. I agree that if we can establish a system that can interconnect these agencies, and it's not just this, there are a number of other agencies that need to be connected. You talk about the NDLEA and a number of other agencies that are related to criminal justice administration. If we're able to interconnect them and see that we have real-time data sharing, and such technological tools that would aid the delivery of justice, that would be really helpful. And this is part of the issues that we have. There's a lot of ineffectiveness in our justice delivery system that can be cured. Well, one can say that it will deploy the necessary technology will be capital intensive. Yes, it will be capital intensive, but we need to even start. I'm not seeing the justice, whether at the federal level or the state level, taking a lot of steps to deploy a lot of equipment for this. I'm also not seeing our courts working towards, establishing the systems that we need to make administration of justice a lot more effective. And I had earlier on alluded to the issues that we have in the judiciary, for instance, taking longhand. But beyond taking longhand, right now we're at a point where we need virtual hearing of cases, especially criminal matters. Weekends, the courts need to ensure that there's speedy dispensation of justice, especially for criminal matters. Because I understand at some point that over 100 persons were arrested and being charged to court on a particular day with the NSAS protest. How does one judge or magistrate, or how many of them would hear it within what space of time? This is really difficult. So we need technology to ensure that we're able to bridge the gap. And I think that those are my thoughts with regards to that. I'm not sure if someone else wants to chip in a few things as well.
Okay. I'd like to just add to that. I would say that I think we all know that we need technology in our justice system, and definitely there have been a lot of proposals take into government to automate the system. With software, it can be done. Definitely, we know that the system can be rectified with technology, but the issue is the buy-in of the government and the buy-in of the people who can actually make this happen. And we definitely need our government to buy into putting this in place. Perhaps the damage that was done to the High Court and the files lost might lead to an interest or might result in some work being done in that regard. I believe the president of the Nigerian Bar Association will be in a good place to take this to the government and to make a change. So I hope that will be done. But yes, it can be done.
Just to say something, please, Shehu. I agree with you, a lot can be done, but the government seems to be paying only lip service to what they need to do. They go to the, they say, for instance, you hear every day that the Lagos State Judiciary are doing e-filing, but the e-filing is not working. It's not working. We need to make sure that these things work end to end. And I agree with you, there needs to be a lot of pressure from the Bar Association. Incidentally, on the day that Olumide Abata, the president of the NBA, was going to visit the Lagos High Court, I was in the team that went with him. And sadly, that the burning down of the High Court provides us with a good opportunity to rebuild and rebuild technologically. But this is a month after. It doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like there's any effort towards, building towards that technological development that we're talking about. And I remember very well that was one of the issues that Olumide Abata mentioned to the Chief Judge of Lagos State. Let's hope that they get to do it, but I think that there needs to be more pressure on these government officials to ensure that they actually, do not just pay lip service, but actually walk their talk.
I agree.
Thank you so much. So the next question seems like my final question. Please, Ikechukwu, the AFG recently phased out the use of stamp and seal by lawyers powers of the Council of the Bar.
There was a court action which I think was withdrawn at some point, and I think the bar is looking at the NBA at the national level is looking at for them to prepare, for instance, a conveyancing document that will go to the registry. The registry will ask which lawyer franked it, and if they don't have the seal of the lawyer, they wouldn't be accepted for filing or for perfection. So it has really helped the profession, and a lot of us had mixed feelings at the time when the Attorney General of the Federation nullified that process. I understand that there are efforts to ensure that that is dealt with, but the issue of electronic seal or an electronic process is something that we have still not found a way around it. As we all know, in a place like Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and many of the cities, it will be easy to use electronic means to identify who is a lawyer, or even file processes, or even authenticate documents. But when you now start going to the provinces, Ilesha, Aba, Jigawa, it becomes more difficult. I also know that there's a lot of issues around the data, having a proper data of who has been qualified to practice law in Nigeria today. I would not hope brief for the NBA because I'm not an officer of the NBA as we speak right now. But I think that that's something that the NBA is working on to ensure that we have the right, we know who are the lawyers, and then possibly find means of weeding away those who are not proper lawyers. Those are my thoughts with regards to these questions.
Anyone else? David, say Nancy, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that sounds more like Ikechukwu stuff, which he has spoken on. Yeah, but I tend to agree as well. I mean, digital, so much as we are working towards a few things in terms of modernization and legal tech, we need to be mindful of the fact that Nigeria has amazing cities. Okay, so like last week, I was in Obangede, which is there's no electricity in the building, which was clearly built in the 60s. So they used generators, and funny enough, one of the judges, so there are two courts there. So one of the judges wanted them to turn on the generator because there was no light. And his registrars told him that the generator belongs in terms of functionality. And like Ikechukwu said, the seal has actually done quite a lot in terms of bringing a level of sanity to what people who pass themselves off as lawyers can do, because there are a lot of guys who are not lawyers, who sign documents, who do a lot of things. That seal sort of brings a level of sanity to who can do what. And I think doing away with it for whatever reason, it's just, I think until we're able to get our systems right, then we can now start working towards digitizing a few of those things. But now is not the time, clearly not the time, if we don't have the systems in place yet.
Thank you so much. So we've come to the end of this session, and I'm really, really happy to have had the opportunity of moderating this and discussing with all of you. It's been very enlightening and informative, and we're very grateful to have you all here. Even though you have a very busy day, but you took out time to be here. Thank you so much. I'll be handing over to my colleague Maduka, who will be taking the next session. Thank you so much.
Wunmi, thank you very much.
Thank you, Wunmi. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Thank you to all attendees and participants who have made themselves available at this time. So on your screen, you'd see that there's a training called Understanding Cybersecurity, Crowdfunding, and the Capital Markets. And somebody from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, who are the ones organizing the training in collaboration with the Innovation and Technology Lawyer Network, will address us. So if Temitope is ready for us, I think we're ready. Temitope, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.